How long has it been?
How long since what?
Since, I don't know, I entered the Higurashi mines. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the post chapter 1 discussion episode. For those of you just joining us, hi, I'm eskay. That's Vivian. Say hi, Vivian.
Hi, Vivian.
All right, great. This is going to cover my thoughts and speculation after reading the first chapter of Higurashi. Now, again, if in case you've forgotten, the dynamic for this series has been Vivian has watched the animes for Higurashi and has a pretty firm idea of what actually happens. We both played Umineko together, but this is my first time playing and reading anything about Higurashi. So while we were playing it this time, I kind of approached this mystery in like 3 distinct phases. The first thing, we wound up recording the entire chapter in like just a week or so. We were really
I feel like it was longer than a week.
Only barely. We did a lot of 2-episode days to get chapter 1 done. And while we were doing that, I just kind of shot the shit live on camera and whatever I had. After we had finished the entire thing and I started editing the episodes, I went back and while I was editing, started taking notes on each episode as I was going through, now with the whole chapters of context. After I finished that, I went back and collated all my notes from all the chapters into like a kind of more discrete document, which is what I have in front of me now. I had to buy an entirely new notebook to do that. I ran out of space in my old one, and now I've got a new one. It's got a Funya Rinpa on it, which is pretty great. But I worked hard to try to give this mystery its due. If nothing else, Ryukishi has earned that much from me as a reader after reading Umineko, so I have no doubt that this will be worth the investment I put into it. Now what's going to happen is that we put out a call for some questions from the Discord. Vivian has her own set of questions and such. She's just going to throw me as well. I don't know how... I've seen nothing about what she's got here. I don't know how directed this is going to be.
I've seen nothing about what I got either.
Okay, this is going to be great for everyone. We've also talked a lot outside of recording sessions, obviously, so... hopefully if I forget to bring up something important, Vivian will poke me if I've already mentioned it before.
Hopefully.
I've got no idea how long this is going to take, but we are going to go until we've got nothing more to say.
All right.
So
see you next year.
Fucking do this.
So, do you want to kick off with my questions or with viewer questions? We can do either order.
I think it's up to you. You're the one directing this.
Okay.
I'm just here to be thankful. Like I already did my hard work,
mm-hmm.
And you could vouch for how much writing I put into this.
I think let's start with the ones I drafted up, and let's do the viewer questions second, because I think the ones I drafted up will be a good chance for you to like explicate and your theories and address things systematically, and then the viewer questions will be more of a chance for like grab bag. Talking about whatever folks are interested in once we've gotten the systematic stuff out of the way.
That sounds pretty good.
Okay. Then, do you want to dive in?
Yeah, let's fuck me up.
All right. So, first thing I want to ask is, what happened? We saw a bunch of we saw a kid move to town, a bunch of increasingly mysterious stuff. Happen around him and to him, leading to his untimely and sudden demise along with some of his close friends. So
all right. So we're looking for
in broad strokes, what's up? What happened?
So my high level kind of understanding of events is something like this. Keiichi Maebara, or kind of a lonely kid who's had trouble making friends.
Mm-hmm.
His family build a house here in Hinamizawa, so they choose to move here.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes with them, moving from the city after the funeral of a loved one, right? And from there, it really feels like this is the story. Like this is a really tragic story, and there are like a couple of different tragedies all going on all at once here. I think the main tragedy that we are witness to is that Keiichi Maebara is, if nothing else, likely clinically depressed and incapable of, and very susceptible to being paranoid.
Clinically depressed, you say? That's an interesting.
I can elaborate on that in a little bit, but
okay, yeah. Let's talk about that separately.
And it feels like it's left him in a state where he is, unable to really be happy for long periods of time. This kid seems to have a propensity for seeing the worst in things. Now, this kid, unbeknownst to him, has been put into a situation, has moved into a town that seems to be at the root of some town-wide conspiracy. Right? There seems to be there's been a series of incidents with disturbing regularity over the past couple of years, right? And it seems to and Keiichi seems to latch onto the fact that at least his friends Rena and Mion, part of the small circle of friends he's made, at least those two seem to have some involvement in what that conspiracy is. From there, a whole lot of what happens is just him assuming the worst possible version of events and rolling with it. From that, Keiichi begins to have a whole bunch of paranoid, and I'm not saying there isn't a conspiracy going on, but he assumes that this is necessarily going to be targeting him, that his friends are involved in it, and that means somehow that he is going to die next. And this is in no small part stoked by an out-of-town cop who's got his own interest in this case. We can talk about Ooishi in a bit, but between the legitimately odd things that Keiichi's noticed, being prodded by a cop from out of town, two of his close friends legitimately being involved in some kind of cover-up, and also his own inability to trust that people, that his friends are his friends, that his family loves him and wants to watch out for him. He spirals into a really unhealthy and actively dangerous state of paranoia and violence that culminates in him willingly killing two of his best friends because he thinks he will die otherwise. And I don't doubt that Keiichi believes that that's what the state of affairs is. I have no doubt that he believes that he will die if he does not kill Mion and Rena in that moment. He's wrong. He's absolutely wrong. But I 100% believe that he believes it.
All right.
Now, parallel to that, this is also the story of a small, plucky group of what appear to be largely orphan girls.
Yeah?
Who seem to be coming together with one another for some kind of mutual support. This little network that Rika, Satoko, Rena, and Mion, and previously Satoshi had formed seems to be not just for friendship, but also keeping their spirits up and keeping them happy. Because all of their lives seem to have tragedy in the back of it. Tragedy is directly related to this Oyashiro-sama's curse, right? Rika's parents, her dad died and her mom is missing. Satoko's dad died. Satoko's mom is missing. She moves in, she and her brother Satoshi move in with her uncle. Her step-aunt then gets killed, and Satoshi goes missing. And now she, for some reason, doesn't live with her uncle anymore. Mion her family seems to be heavily involved in local politics, which we'll get to in a moment, and seems to have been the victim of some altercations with the dam site foreman a couple years back. And Rena, on the surface, appears to have had a psychotic break at her old school, resulting in her assaulting 3 kids and destroying all the windows of her school building, and then moving back to Hinamizawa. That's another tragedy that's going on here, is that these girls' lives seem to have gotten the short end of a lot of sticks. And there is a through line here of like them finding a very endearing through line of them finding like comfort and well-being in one another's company, and trying to make the best of some lives that seem on the surface pretty unfortunate. It really seems like Rika might be taking care of Satoko. It seems like Rena might not have parents at home. Mion does have family, but she only ever talks about her grandmother, her uncle. She never mentions any direct family members. And while it seems they care about her, it feels like there is a little bit of a distance there, given the Sonozaki family's standing in the community, which again we'll get to. But that's the second major through line that I see here, is that this is just a really sad story about a bunch of girls coming together and helping each other get through a really shitty series of years in their lives.
Fair enough.
There is the third major through line thing that's happening is that appears to be a conspiracy in this town. This conspiracy appears to be centered around what folks have dubbed Oyashiro-sama's curse. Oyashiro-sama being the local deity, described as a guardian deity for not just Hinamizawa, but for just Hinamizawa or for the entire region. It might just be Hinamizawa. It doesn't matter. Oyashiro-sama is the local guardian deity. And is being blamed for a series of otherwise unexplained incidents that seem to occur every year on the town's local festival of the Watanagashi. This goes all the way back to the first incident, which took place in, I've got a timeline here that I wrote down, 1979, when there was a murder and dismemberment at the local dam site. We'll get to the dam in a moment, because it's a whole other through line here. From that point, every year since, it seems the pattern has been one person dies, another person goes missing. Right? That seems to, and those people, at least up until this year, seem to have all been directly related to this small group of girls too.
Yep.
So that's another through, and not just that, it does seem as if there is, like, no matter what you think the shape of it is, there does appear to be an active conspiracy to control what information about those events is made public and what the narrative surrounding them is. I'm not making any claims about who yet or why, just that it does appear to be an actual thing based on Rena and Mion's own actions and knowledge. Fourth through line. This is a story about a town that is the victim of industrialization, of modernization. This small town in rural Japan is what was slated to be flooded to make way for the next big dam. It was described as the next big dam after the Kurobi Dam, which I actually looked up some stuff about just to get some context of like what its construction looked like at that time. The Kurobi Dam it's still up to date. It's a wonderful piece of architecture. It's fascinating. But what's really interesting about it is that I couldn't easily find it. It might still be out there, but like me and at least a couple of people on the Discord tried to find it and couldn't find info on this. The story of who got displaced by that dam is largely forgotten. What is remembered about it was how many people died making it, which is over 170 people.
That's a lot.
Ostensibly, the story of someone dying during a dam construction shouldn't be news. That should be expected. But obviously the locals here don't want their town flooded. And through a bunch of political movements and joined together as a community, they push back against the incursion of the dam upon their area. This culminates in a bunch of protests and the murdering of the dam site foreman on the Watanagashi of 1979. And in that light, a lot of what happens after can be seen as the town, or at least the people that live here, banding together to resist the slow encroachment of modernization that just would actively destroy their way of life. That is an important through line in this story.
Is that all the through lines, or you got more? You got more coming?
The fifth through line, and this is very important.
Okay.
Higurashi is a story about kids playing games. You might not think this is important because it's very, very silly. But a lot of the games they play have very interesting thematic elements to them. In what strategies the kids choose to play them, and what that says about them as characters and how they think. A large part of this first chapter was dedicated to not entirely superfluous, but pretty bloated chapters about kids just hanging out and having fun, which is all good. It makes the other stuff hurt a lot more. That's really what those are kind of like the lenses through which I view this story.
Okay.
Those are the very important through lines. IMHO. And that's kind of what I imagine the general shape of events to be. Notwithstanding what I think about who is behind what or why, but that's kind of like how I've modeled things in my head. Does that make sense?
It does.
Does that answer your question?
It very much does. So, let me pose you another one.
Please, by all means.
So, as we were playing through episode 1, you had a theory that was similar in some ways, but also quite different. And your theory then was largely just the first through line, just the Keiichi is mentally disturbed and is hallucinating things that aren't happening, and that none of this is really going on. And that seemed like a pretty good theory, right? It explained just about everything at that time other than the last mystery.
Very last mystery, right.
So, knowing that, and knowing that you've moved from that to a much a more complicated theory with more moving parts, I'm curious, like, what reasons made you make the leap?
So, part of it is just like, part of it is naturally the fact that when we're reading this for the first time, reading it live not live, but like we're recording ourselves, our honest first reactions, you can't really get juggle that huge picture. Like, I couldn't juggle that huge picture of everything in my head all at once. A lot of all this came together because I took the time to sit down afterwards and kind of reprocess everything and connect all the dots together that I could. I think for a while, like, it was very easy to kind of bank on Keiichi being actively delusional. Because there's a lot of otherwise unexplained stuff that happened. And up until I started taking the conspiracy seriously, which is what at the very, very last scene, the thing where we went back and looked at that note, up until I started taking the conspiracy seriously, that seemed like the best explanation for everything that was going on. If the conspiracy really is a thing that exists, though, which I'm inclined to believe now, then Keiichi's not actively delusional. He's not making up the fact that there is a conspiracy and that his friends are indeed hiding stuff from him. What is happening is that he's misinterpreting what that means.
His
friends are keeping things from him. And because Keiichi seems incapable of like accepting anything other than the worst possible version of events, he takes that to mean, oh, that means I'm going to be the target for their conspiracy next if they're not telling me what's going on. Rather than, it's probably just dangerous to get you involved, and I'd rather we just continue to hang out and play games because this is fun. He even says it himself at one point. It's like, I about how he, like how he thinks they're doing it to keep him safe, but he's got the wrong idea about what they're keeping him safe from. I think is where the drama comes in on this. Because I'll say this, I do believe Rena and Mion are part of a conspiracy, which makes it sound dramatic. It's different, and they are purposely keeping Keiichi out of the loop. At the very end, they seem finally poised to bring him in on it because he's gone out of his way to make himself a thorn in their side about it and not just let it be. It really seems like that last scene is them being like, fucking fine, you've gone to all this length to figure out a lot of things that we were trying to keep down, so I guess we have to bring you in on this. If you're gonna act like this. And Keiichi takes that to mean, oh god, they're gonna kill me now. Because again, he can't just trust that his friends are his friends. The other thing that stuck on me about Keiichi is that I've kind of come to a better refinement of what I believe is going on with him. I don't believe he's actively delusional and imagining things wholesale. But I do think that he does have a propensity for taking what he assumes to be the worst possible thing happening and running with it. And to such a dramatic degree that he will convince himself that people are there, that things have happened that really have not, just haven't. He likes to use the phrase, what was it? I'm certain, like, it is definitely the case. And like these very firm declarative statements about things that absolutely did not happen. Absolutely did not happen. Like the idea of Rena like shadowing him footstep by footstep in this 07 mart is ridiculous. You telling me like she's standing there behind him while Keiichi's talking with his mom, and his mom's not like, "Hi, Rena, how you doing? why are you playing around?" But at the end of that tip section, he has firmly convinced himself. He has said he is with certainty that she was behind him, though, that there was a presence behind him the whole time, and that whole scene in his entryway where he's like certain that someone was there because he heard what sounded like a sharp intake of breath. And he says that means there definitely was someone there. Where the real takeaway from that scene is when Keiichi says he's definitely sure about something, we don't have any real reason to believe him.
This is interesting.
Keiichi isn't... Oh, sorry.
It seems like you started this by softening your skepticism of Keiichi, that it's not that he's just delusional and seeing things that aren't there at all.
Yep.
But by the end, it seems like we've looped back around to saying that same thing. When he says he's certain, he is not.
Not always. Like, I don't want to say that's always the case, but I'm not saying that this because he's hallucinating events wholesale. I'm saying that this stems from him having some kind of stimuli happening. And maybe he gets like the heebie-jeebies or something when he's walking back home. And that little thing that does happen spirals out in his mind into this grand, horrific, macabre series of events that from that point on are pretty much just him making things up. I'm not saying that he's not delusional in the sense that he's not like carrying on conversations with people who aren't there and whatnot. I think he's delusional in the sense that he assumes that what he feels at any time must be the actual truth. And if he feels like someone is stalking him in his shadow or whatnot, then that has to be the case, rather than maybe I'm not entirely well, maybe I'm a little bit too paranoid and I need to like talk to a doctor.
I think that I don't know. I think it's worth paying some fine attention though to what we're describing.
Yeah.
If we are describing catastrophizing, which could be a thing that you mean by that, or if we're describing outright hallucination, because it seems kind of hard to justify some of the events without invoking outright hallucination.
Yep, it does. But I don't think we've actually, aside from like, and I do think that at some point, he might be. There are indications in the work that Keiichi does sometimes stop himself from thinking about things or purposely stop himself from realizing things. He talks about kind of like the uncanny valley before you recognize that something is wholly human, about not letting himself fully recognize what's happening, about how his mind, he describes blacking out and things happening on occasion while he's not consciously aware of it. He describes letting the video in his head run without him being there to witness it. He describes a lot of these things where it's like seems to be taking an active role in not making stuff up wholesale, but being about as liberal as you can get away with in interpreting things. And I think the most dramatic version of that is in the final scene where Mion's going to write on his shirt and he's convinced that she's going to stab him with a needle.
I don't know. I'd still like to push a bit on the not making things up wholesale. I think it's worth getting really clear on if he makes things up wholesale or not. For example, Rena, is he actually chased through the forest with Rena with an axe, leading to him getting out to the dump site and fighting some guys with his baseball bat and losing?
Mm-hmm.
Does something like that happen? He goes and fights some people? And
during my first read through, I was convinced that stuff had been made up wholesale. I was.
And that's why I bring it up here, because this seems to be a significant difference between your new theory and your old one, and one that seems difficult to account for.
On this new one, I'm... specifically the scene where he's beat up by two faceless people in the middle of the dump. That one, I don't know whether or not to believe there were actually people there, or if he got tripped around and had this kind of, and his brain thought like, oh, this is the most rational explanation for why I'm suddenly in a whole lot of pain. I could, given what I think is the state of the conspiracy, I could be convinced to believe that two people did just find and beat him up. It would be strange.
And then leave him there?
Yeah, like that's the part, like it would be strange, but I don't think, given the other things that I am assuming might be happening, it's not the weirdest. It's like, here's the thing I feel about it. Either way, either it happened or it didn't. It's doesn't really change a whole lot about how I feel. Like if he made it up, if he made it up, he made it up. That's another point in that column. If he didn't, it's another little bit of contact with this actual conspiracy that I do think is there. So like it. I will admit that particular scene with the two people in the junkyard, I have yet to find a conclusion for it that is satisfying to me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I just think it's really interesting thinking about the psychological subtleties of what is hallucinating versus what is making something up versus what is lying to oneself versus what is catastrophizing, because these are all things that it's very easy to speak loosely about as if they're all the one thing, but they're pretty distinct, and they have different reasons for why one might do them and implications for what it might mean.
I guess the biggest thing is that I don't think he's inventing things that aren't rooted in something that is actually happening to him in that moment. Like he's convinced himself he sees a syringe because he's convinced himself that that's how Tomitake died. So when Mio says, we're going to do the same thing to you that we did to Tomitake, it's easy for him to convince himself that that's going to be a syringe and not just, get well soon, buddy. You seem really stressed out and not in a good way.
Generally, when I see someone who's really stressed out and not in a good way, I take a permanent marker and write all over them with smelly, sensory stimulating ink that's not going to make them more upset or make them stressed from having ink on their skin or clothes.
I'm not saying Mion is smart. They're kids. They're fucking children. They're not, like, every single action they take is not going to be the most reasonable version that completely takes into account every minutia. But I do think that's, like, the most reasonable explanation for that.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the things that about him getting stressed out with how Rena approaches him can be when he's saying, like, the person who was not Rena, the Rena who isn't there, and all that stuff. A lot of that I feel can come back to, like, who Rena actually is and why and the particular reasons why she feels threatened by Keiichi. It's not because he's poking around it, for no particular reason. It's because the particular things, at least in my current theory, the particular things he's poking about are things that are very central to her as a character.
And not because he's swinging a bat around and screaming at her.
Right. I mean, she is worried about that as she would a friend, because, like, holy shit, so one of my friends is being incredibly violent all of a sudden. Like, it's noted, like, that people knew he was talking to himself at school. People noticed he had suddenly turned violent and antisocial. And again, I think it's worth pointing out that this was, a couple years after Columbine, and, like, the idea of violence in schools suddenly becoming a very present and major thing in public consciousness. That's a frightening thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think she yells lies at him because he went to lunch with someone and lied about it. I think she yells lies at him because she went to lunch with someone who might have a very much closer connection to her and her history than... Yeah. I think a lot of what Keiichi attributes to supernatural or unreasonable malice in Rena and Mion is actually attributable to them having their own shit going on that they just don't feel the need to tell him about. And when he worms his way into stuff that is probably sensitive to them, they're gonna get a little angry about that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I feel like I verged off topic there, but you know what? Whatever. We ended up here.
Yeah. All right. Let's get back onto a question. Let's get back onto a specific topic. So, what do you think Oyashiro-sama's curse is?
Okay, this is a good one. My original idea was that Oyashiro-sama's curse is a convenient fiction, right? I don't believe that there is a literal magical being called Oyashiro-sama who is killing people and making one go missing every single year on the dot. Related to one particular spoilery fact I know, I might believe in Oyashiro-sama's curse meaning something else, but that's... We'll do that in its own section where I can give the one out of context spoiler I know for this game.
All right.
But in terms of, like, the idea of this annual curse that kills people and makes one go missing, I don't believe that exists. But if it doesn't exist as an actual supernatural thing, then it has to exist because someone or some party of people have to have a vested interest in people believing that. You know what I mean? And according to Tomitake, when he was talking with Keiichi during the Watanagashi, like old people kind of bought into it really quickly, but it was only more recent years that the younger people started to believe as well. It is important to someone or some group of people that Oyashiro-sama's curse be seen as real. And that isn't just the work, that physically cannot be the work of just one person. That needs a group of people to sustain it. And I think if you believe like I do that the curse is not a real thing or a real magical thing, then that follows pretty much by necessity. If you come to that conclusion, then you have to wonder, okay, who benefits from this and why? Who is perpetrating this? And there's a couple of different ideas for this that I've bandied about. I'll go through them in like, I'll save the one I find most convincing for last. The first one is that this is somehow like an organic thing done by the townspeople, kind of like coming together to defend themselves. And we've seen that they will come together to defend themselves from the existence of the Onikakushi Defense League, right? Like in times leading up to the dam, the town would maybe not self-organize, but like people in the town would get people together to come around, and it would show that there is a strong community willpower to fight back against the dam being put on their land and flooding their homes. I don't believe that same community energy immediately would extend to making everyone lie and do Stepford smiles at people, at outsiders. That takes an entirely different level of coordination and investment in something. A town is like full of people with a bunch of diverse interests and needs. Just because they all live there doesn't mean that they all necessarily even want the dam to not happen. As we know from the Hojos, apparently they were supporters of the dam, despite living there. So that's... I don't believe that alone is enough to sustain, like, just an organic town-wide thing, like an unspoken agreement, that we're all just going to pretend this is a curse. I don't think that's viable. We do see some scenes that might indicate that, but like the teacher being like, all right, everyone, we're going to have people around asking about this. But we also know that the Hinamizawa cases have received worldwide attention. It was specifically mentioned that it was like it's been from the police chief's memo that those cases had received literally worldwide attention. It's not so much to be like, guys, just please don't say anything to get the true crime podcasters back here, please. We don't need them in here, all right?
We do not need the true crime podcasters invading our checks notes, all ages school.
Exactly, because they will. Like, people get really weird about others' privacy when they feel they're entitled to your story. Couldn't tell you where I learned that lesson. So that I don't think it's an organic thing done by the villagers. The second group that might come up is like, okay, maybe this is a thing done by community elders, people in places of power within the community. Like the mayor, we get his name, Kimiyoshi?
Yeah,
Mayor Kimiyoshi, who was the one who wrote the paper for the Onikakushi Defense League. Maybe this is a thing done by select members of the community. If that's the case, it still doesn't quite make sense. Like, why would they then want the Furudes to die? The Furudes seem to have a pretty big investment in not having this, in having this dam come together. I know. Ooishi says that a faction of villagers harbored ill will towards Mr. Furude due to a lack of leadership during the dam dispute, but I don't think that makes him next for the chopping block. And killing your own people and not, like, killing your own people, it seems like a really bad way to get people to back you. No, I think this is more, when you look at the particular cases, I feel like it's more likely than not that this is a way of intimidating, not intimidating the outsiders from fucking with them, but more a way or it. Let me start the sentence over. I'm sorry. There's so much that's been going through my head, and I really want to make sure I get all this right. I just don't believe it's a conspiracy by the community elders, because it's just bad practice to kill the people who would be helping you. And that leaves a couple of other ideas. One other idea is that the Oyashiro-sama's curse is a fiction that goes both ways. This is a fiction that is weaponized in one way, but then was weaponized in another way by another group. So, like, one group at a time started it for one reason, then another group could have moved in on it and kept it going for a different reason. This is something I've bandied about. It might still be the case, but I think I've got a better explanation for it that only involves one party at this point. But it is something that is still going on in my head that I'm still weighing. Like, okay, this doesn't have to be the work of one group. Once you've started something like this and put in the effort to maintaining it, if someone else comes in and does something that looks like it's a part of it, you're kind of like, well, shit, I guess we got to roll with that, right? Otherwise, we risk giving up the whole game that we've invested this in. We do learn of one other faction that has a lot of local power.
Yeah.
Leading not just from the local area, but all the way up to the national diet, has put pressure on the police who are investigating these cases, and has a vested interest in the outcome of the very first incident. And that is the Sonozaki family.
Interesting.
So the Sonozaki family, hold on, I've got a page of my notes on this. By the way, just so we're clear, I literally like longhand wrote pages upon pages of notes for this. So
I can vouch for this as true.
Yeah. I'm literally flipping through a book in front of me right now. We know the Sonozaki family are described as as local, almost yakuza. It was either Ooishi or his superior during that one scene. They have family members in high places. They have a relative. They have a family member who's a prefectural assembly member, one who is a city councilor, supposedly in Okinomiya. According to Ooishi, the mayor of Hinamizawa is also involved with the Sonozaki family, Mayor Kimiyoshi. Ooishi says specifically the mayor of Hinamizawa is involved with their family as well. And they would so like they clearly have a lot of power, especially if they're able to like show up where the one cop who seems to be really investigating this is having udon one night with his boss and put pressure on him for, you know, looking into the older cases. It's fine if you look into the one we just set up for you with Tomitake, but don't go rustling back in the past now, you hear? So they have the apparatus in play. They have the power to make something like that happen. They also have the motivation.
Yeah.
Not only were the Sonozakis described as being behind the damn protests by Ooishi says that they were behind the damn protests. We also know that Mion Sonozaki herself was involved in, I want to get the wording of this right, so hold on. Mion had been involved in several incidents with the dam site foreman before the protests. I have... Yeah. According to Ooishi, the Sonozaki family led the protests. Mion has charges on her record stemming from these protests, misdemeanor and obstruction of public worker offenses, I believe. And the site overseer had multiple altercations with Mion before the event, all according to Ooishi. And I don't think he has a reason to lie about that. So, we also, from Tomitake's recounting of events, we know that he describes this events leading up to the dam as like a bunch of government guys trying to settle things with money, but when that failed, they did a bunch of nasty stuff. Mayor and prominent figures in the village all signed petitions and stuff, and the mayor of the village we know is involved with the Sonozaki family. And that kind of paints a picture to me that something happened between Mion and the site foreman. This didn't have to go this way, but it sounds like unspeakable acts occurred in the lead up to the dam protests. Right, that's the phrase that was used. It's in my mind. It sounds like Mion might have been assaulted by the dam site foreman. Regardless of how severe what their altercation was, they had repeated contact with one another, and clearly that escalated. I don't have and fucking with the local Yakuza family's granddaughter, right? That's a good enough reason to want to assert your territory here. Like, no, you don't come in and fuck with our space here. We tried doing this, and then you fucked around with the kids, so now we're doing it this way. And the idea of a group with local power having control over these cases makes a lot more sense. Makes a lot of things about these cases make more sense to me. I mentioned this while we were playing about how the fact that the people who 5 out of 6 people involved in the original dismemberment just like rolled the next day. How the person who assaulted the housewife a couple years down the line confessed while being interrogated about an entirely different crime. About all this about like with a like Yakuza like family having that kind of power, they can make these cases go away by giving people up to be the perps. And it kind of makes that seem, it kind of ties up that in for me, like why, if these are such mysterious, or if this case really is about developing like community, why are we all rolling the next day rather than protecting one another and giving each other alibis? You know what I mean? That's all to say, I think the most likely culprit for who is orchestrating these deaths, or orchestrating the myth of Oyashiro-sama's curse, is the Sonozakis. And also Mion says straight up at one point that she should have killed Ooishi. Mion clearly believes she has power over who lives, or some measure of power over who lives and dies. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a bit more about some specifics for
okay, sure.
Yeah.
Because
that was the first overarching question. I have a bunch of sub questions.
Oh yeah,
here.
No, please, by all means.
So,
because I didn't go into like that deep detail on each of the events, but that's aside from the first one.
So, why are Keiichi's friends connected to the curse? We know in your theory why Mion is, but what about the others?
That one, I don't really have a good answer for why the other ones would have happened the way they did. We know that the Hojos were supporters of the dam. That could have been enough in that first year for them to be the victims for that case. The one that seems out of place are the Furudes. And I'm willing to believe that at most one of the victims of Oyashiro-sama's curse was just a really unfortunate coincidence. Like, maybe Mr. Furude really did just die from the sudden anxiety, and they're like, oh, fuck. Well, I guess that's the curse victim this year.
Better stage a curse real quick.
All right. And, I mean, you say it, but yes, I do believe that the circumstances surrounding their deaths are staged. Not necessarily that the deaths themselves are faked, but that the details surrounding them are staged to give a certain narrative. And if we want to jump ahead a little bit, I believe that might be the job of someone called the manager. Part play director, part construction site foreman. Anyway, So I don't.
So wait. Part construction site foreman. Who was the one who was killed? Again.
In the first year?
Yeah.
Allegedly the construction site the dam site foreman. I was just using the phrasing that it's the phrasing that Rena uses in like her very final scene describing the manager to Keiichi. She's like, "Oh yeah, the manager, part construction site foreman, part play director." That's what Rena says. Sorry,
okay.
I didn't mean to imply a connection.
Sorry, I just wanted because I was trying to remember because we brought up theories about people getting into confrontations with Mion and so on. I was trying to remember which person was the one who died and which person was the one who was the at-large killer. I don't want.
I've got some other things to sidebar about the first murder, but I feel like that might be too much of a digression right now. We'll save it for one.
So it is the foreman who gets killed, though.
That's what are you asking me what the story is, or what I think actually happened during the dam? What is reported is that the dam site foreman is dismembered.
Okay,
right.
Who is the ringleader again?
And then so the ringleader, I haven't said who it was.
Right, but I mean just in the story, because they said somebody was the ringleader and was at large.
Yes, they didn't say who. We have gotten no indication, because believe me, I looked for that.
I could have sworn they said what the job role was at least.
What the job role was? No, they've said no. I'll double check my notes right now. The main offender is still at large on wanted lists nationwide. We know that they were a male suspect. That's we know that the main offender is supposedly male. Because they describe as being on his trail. The motive purportedly a drunken verbal dispute during which he killed the victim in a fit of anger. And that's according to the newspaper report. But no, they don't say anything else. I wish they did. I really wish they did.
Okay.
But the de facto leader.
But that's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure that I had in my head the events straight, because I realized that what I was thinking might not necessarily be lining up.
They discovered his car abandoned near the marsh. Supposedly he was going to throw his right arm into the right arm that he was tasked with disposing of into the marsh, but there are no clues left to his whereabouts.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry, I really wish we knew more about him. I have like a mental list of people who are unknown but seem important and could conceivably be alive. And they're among them.
Okay. So, next question.
Yes.
Why now? Why specifically at the Watanagashi festival?
Why specifically at the Watanagashi festival?
Yeah.
I don't know that there has to be anything specifically to it other than that the first year, that's when it was. Town's all out at night, everyone's getting drunk. And it makes for a good lore each year. It might just be like inertia from like, oh, that's the time that they died on the first year. We got to keep it going. I've tried to be suspicious about the Watanagashi festival, and unless I'm willing to accept a large level of delusion, I can't find a whole lot wrong with it. I'll be honest. Like, I really did want there to be something sinister about the Watanagashi ceremony. But unless I want to accept also that Keiichi is being delusional to a pretty heavy level, or that the town is willing, and that a lot of people in the town are willingly in on a very large conspiracy, then I just kind of got to accept that it's just what it looks like, which is just it's a strange local ceremony. I wanted it to be more suspicious than I think it actually is. I think narratively it serves the purpose of giving a very strange and unusual backdrop to events, and I think that helps the curse out because it ties it to like the local area. This is specifically for Oyashiro-sama, this festival. So that helps it, but I don't know that there's any other reason that these things the original murder, the dam site murder, dismemberment, had to happen on the evening of the Watanagashi.
Fair enough. Then why are there both murders and disappearances? It seems kind of weird that it's like, oh, on the night of the Watanagashi, one person dies and one goes missing. It seems that's so much harder than just two people die. Why does that happen? And what happens to the disappeared folks?
I feel like that was an unfortunate coincidence that just became part of the lore from inertia as well. Like the first year, the foreman dies and the main perpetrator goes missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The main offender goes missing. The next year, both of the Hojos get pushed off of a observation platform, and only the father's body is found. It could be that it's a very big contrived way of hiding people, but I think by the time you get around to the fourth year, like but the fourth year, and they're like, oh, and also I guess a couple of days later, Satoshi went missing as well. It's clear that like they might not be as committed to this part of the bit as they are the people dying part of the bit.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, like I feel like the one person dying was the game plan. The one person dying and one person missing kind of got ascribed to things by pareidolia after the fact, and they're like, oh, fuck, I guess we're doing this now.
All right.
Yeah, that's my feeling about that so far.
So, why is it so taboo to talk about? Why is it that folks think you shouldn't speak about it in public? Mm-hmm. Why Mion hushes Keiichi when he wants to talk about it? Why Ooishi wants him to keep it quiet? Well,
you've asked two very different questions. Why people in general wouldn't want you to talk about it and keep it hush-hush.
Good
why
point.
People like Mion and Ooishi, who both are involved in this case, might not want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
For Mion and Ooishi, they have their own reasons. Mion, because I am speculating that her family is the one behind it.
Mm-hmm.
She seems pretty aware of it, and like the more she talks about it, the more she has to talk around things, and that it's just easier not to talk about things unless, because otherwise if you keep talking about this, Keiichi, you're going to have to get involved, and that's a whole lot of legwork for us.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Ooishi, we saw the Sonozakis putting pressure on him.
We did.
Yeah, during that one scene where they're going out for udon, right? And as long as he's going in the correct direction, they're willing to let him be. And Mion even talks about him as if like they letting him live was a favor because he was going to be retiring. But it's clear that he is at a minimum, a thorn in their side. I've got some other reasons about him, but that's why those two wouldn't want to talk about it. As for why people in general wouldn't want to talk about it, I don't know that that's the case. Who else has Keiichi tried to talk to about this?
Fair enough.
And Rena also seems clearly involved, given what her backstory is, right?
Does she?
I don't think so, but for different, we'll get there. At least on paper, she does. But who, aside from people who definitely are involved, has Keiichi tried to talk to about this? He tried to talk to Tomitake, and Tomitake was relatively open about things. He answered his questions.
Mm-hmm.
And Tomitake is a known factor around town. He comes there several times a year. People know him. People know his face, and he's got other stuff going on, obviously, but like, he was perfectly fine talking about it. Who's to say if Keiichi went to like the teacher or went to the principal and been like, hey, I'm having some issues with this. Can you just, level with me and tell me what's going on here? Mm-hmm. Who's to say the principal wouldn't have just told him some things to like help ease his mind?
Fair enough.
It just seems like what you asserted and then your examples were very different.
I don't think I asserted anything. I think I asked questions.
The question you asked and then the examples you gave of examples for that question were very different.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you for picking it into two separate, more subtle questions. Okay, so I have one final question about Oyashiro-sama's curse then.
Sure.
Which is, why does belief in it matter so much?
Why does belief in it matter? Because belief is the currency by which it has control over people, right? Like, if you don't believe in the curse, then there's nothing. If you don't believe that the curse is real, then it loses whatever value it might have had as a fiction. The value of the fiction is that people believe the fiction is real. If they don't believe your fiction's real, then it's just a fun story you tell. But if people believe that it's actually real, that this is some supernatural force, then that suddenly has negotiating power. You can suddenly, you can strong arm people into, not building a dam that would flood your area. You can strong arm folks into looking the other way around certain murders because it's a curse. What you gonna do? You can't prosecute a curse. That's why belief is real. If people start openly and avowedly not believing in it, then what are we even doing?
And then it's someone's fault. And if it's someone's fault, then we need to prosecute them.
Exactly.
We need to investigate them.
So as long as it's not someone's fault, right? That's certainly a good way of putting it.
Okay. So
clap twice if you believe.
So that's a lot about the curse. Let's talk about something a little bit different.
Yeah.
What is the police's role in this story? It seems like they're investigating and helping to some extent, but it also seems like they're covering things up potentially. What exactly is going on there?
Yeah, because I've kind of gone back and forth on this as well. The police at large seem to be in a position where they are receiving pressure from the Sonozakis. The police chief seems to be, and they and judging from the radio call tip, right, they certainly seem to be aware that something was going to happen. They even mentioned the doctor in that scene, which is juicy. Ooh, how much do they know is going to I don't think they're complicit in the sense that they are helping to stage things, but I think they are complicit in the sense that by and large, they ain't trying to stop it. They seem more resigned than anything.
Mm-hmm.
That as long as we're getting the order from above to not look into these any more deeply or try to connect any more dots, what are we going to do? I'm just going to make a paycheck, right? The notable exception to this being Ooishi, who we're just kind of led to believe from the beginning is just he wants to get to the bottom of things before he retires to a farm in Hokkaido with his mom, I guess. I made the farm part up. But he's what do we know about him? He's got a loan he needs to repay. He's going to retire soon, and he's got a carrot dangling in front of him with a big juicy pension, a bonus to pad his pension.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's got his grandmama he gets stories from. He's got his mom he wants to take care of. By and large, it seems like his involvement is just, I want to get to the bottom of the things. I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
I think Ooishi has a much more personal involvement in this all, but we can get to that when we get to Ooishi. You want to just know about the police, right?
Well, if you want to talk about Ooishi and what you think his stake is, now's a perfectly good time to talk about it.
All right. I'll preface this by saying I'm not 100% committed to this, but as I was going through things, one of the things I was doing while I was taking my notes and calling things was kind of making a mental list of people we know and people we don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
People who seem like they should be involved in the story and are conspicuously absent, and people whose involvement just seems kind of suspect, or we don't really know why they're hanging around. People like Tomitake, who on the face of it, why the fuck is he dead? Why the fuck is Mio missing? What do they have to do with anything, right? One of the questions I was asking myself was why would Ooishi be so damn involved in this?
Mm-hmm.
Sense of justice or not, it really feels that's a pretty far distance to reach out for someone when you're retiring at the end of the year and have a cushy, parachute waiting for you. why risk fucking that up and getting yourself killed? My working theory, though, is that he is actually much more directly connected to these cases than we are perhaps led to believe.
Okay.
There is one person among all of the deaths from these families that is still alive, living in a town nearby, but seems to have just kind of quietly faded in the background without much notice. And that is the case of Satoko's uncle. Satoko's uncle is a weird figure in this play because after the death of Satoko and Satoshi's parents, they did go off to live with their aunt and uncle. Their aunt, then her was found. Her body was found on Watanagashi. Her step aunt, her uncle is the younger brother of her dad. But then nothing. He just continued, like, it's just noticed that he's still living in a nearby city, but nothing about her. Clearly, she's not living with him.
Mm-hmm.
She's living in Hinamizawa. She appears to be living with Rika. She appears to be living with Rika alone at the shrine, which is its own. But, what level of involvement? This is, I'm again, full shot in the dark territory. But if we slot in Ooishi as potentially Satoko's uncle, a lot of other things do begin to make sense. What is his involvement in this case? Oh, they murdered his wife that one time. Why does Mion think that she could have killed him? Because he could have been a victim that one year during the Watanagashi. And she's like, fuck it, you're going to retire. Whatever, fine. Why is Mion spreading talk about him being the messenger of Oyashiro-sama? Because you want to build up part of the lore surrounding this guy, so that way, who's supposedly appearing in front of people before they disappear. And if he is indeed Satoko's uncle, he's had an involvement ever since that second year. Ever since the ever since he got custody of Satoko and Satoshi, right? He would have had a reason to visit Miss Furude on the Watanagashi because, hey, look, our daughters are friends, I guess. Or my daughter lives around there. I feel like a lot of it, and again, this is I want to emphasize this. This is based on nothing more than just it feels right. It's vibes.
So on this theory, did Ooishi used to live in Hinamizawa?
Did he used to live in Hinamizawa? No, probably not.
Did we hear about Satoko leaving Hinamizawa and coming back?
We don't hear about her leaving and coming back, but we know that her uncle lives in another city. So it's never explicitly said, but it seems more reasonable that she moved to be with her uncle and aunt than her uncle and aunt moved to Hinamizawa. Or the other way that could have gone is that they lived there and then her uncle moved away to get away from things. Yeah, it's I suspected purposefully left very vague.
So if we're going by the theory that Satoko did move away to live with her uncle Ooishi, why would she be back in Hinamizawa now?
It's a great question, isn't it? That's a great question.
Not only committing child abandonment, but sending them to another town? But then still having an involvement in the case?
Not having an involvement in the case, yeah, but purposely keeping a distance away from... A lot of this rests on what the specific circumstances were surrounding the death of the housewife, the death of Satoko and Satoshi's step-aunt. All we know is that her body was found. Actually, we know a few things. Here, hold on, I got a page about this one. June 1982. Wasn't reported in the newspaper. Perpetrator was caught. The case closed. Apparently, some just described by Tomitake as some nut job trying to continue on the legacy of the curse. Her body was found in the Watanagashi, but we don't know that that's when she was murdered. Ooishi said the perp was caught, and he was a miscreant with a record of narcotics abuse, and that he admitted to the crime while being questioned about an entirely different incident. So again, just kind of rolling over really easily, making this easy for the cops, making sure that, no, here's your guy. And then the perp also, that perp from that case was the one that died in his cell during questioning by swallowing a spork. Unknown if accident or suicide. Couldn't have been murder. Unknown if accident or suicide.
I've swallowed my fair share of sporks by accident. This doesn't seem suspicious.
I'm sure I've swallowed my fair share of sporks. I'm sure that if someone, perhaps murdered my wife, maybe I would get sporky. Maybe that would make people feel like maybe I'm not okay to take care of a small child anymore.
Ooishi the Sporkmeister.
We don't. There's no way to know. And again, I want to reemphasize this. This theory about Ooishi being her uncle is entirely vibes based. There is, as far as I can tell, nothing in the text that would actively support it. Just a whole lot of things that would kind of click into place in terms of motivations and involvement.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And plus, who are the other known characters who, like, I'm not saying that her uncle has to be a character that shows up, but what are our other options? Tomitake? She's around Tomitake all the time.
To be fair, we have 7 more chapters. We have a lot of options.
We do have a lot of options. Like, I'm not, but just given, I don't have those chapters to work with.
That's true.
I'm trying to do the best I can with what I got in front of me.
Fair enough.
All right. Sorry, that was a digression on Ooishi. What you got for me next?
Let's talk about Keiichi for a little while.
Yo, the sad sack.
So,
yeah.
Actually, let's start with that. You've started calling him the sad sack and talking about clinical depression, which is interesting because that's not something that came up while we were playing the game.
No, it's. I think I brought it up like maybe once in passing, because he starts to get things like waking up really late, having a terrible routine. Food and stuff starts tasting bland, starts getting into a very resigned and depressed mindset where only the worst possible version of events could possibly be the one that's real. He's got, at least on the surface, he's got a lot of superficial things going on that make it look like might be depressed. He also mentions not having a great time in his previous school, like treating all of his he describes it not having friends but having rivals. Right? I can see how maybe the pressure from that environment, that kind of a pressure cooker, might have led to him being this way. Even if it's not actually depression, like meant to be depression, it's clear the kid is just not used to being happy.
That's interesting. Sell me on this more.
Okay.
Because I don't recall details about happiness being a major issue that came up for him. So I'm interested in why. It doesn't really
in the text, does it? It's never like the case where we're saying like, oh, Keiichi is happy or Keiichi is sad, but dude does a lot of crying. Dude feels very alone and disconnected from his family and those around him. He doesn't feel like he can go to his parents when something's wrong. He actively talks about how he wants to kill himself. Or not how he wants to kill himself. He goes to his parents and talks about how he thinks he's going to die.
So that's a very different thing.
Yeah, that is a different thing.
We're alighting some things that are
They're
pretty different.
Yeah. That was my fault for conflating too. I sincerely, that should not have been conflated. But he doesn't feel he can trust his parents to talk to them. He doesn't think talking to them would do any good. He thinks the only adult in his life he can trust is Ooishi because he thinks he understands Oishi's motivation, that he's bait. He doesn't believe his friends when they tell him that they're concerned about him. And that they're trying, and that they want to know, are you feeling okay? You don't seem well. And everyone around him notices that he's not doing great. Like even Satoko and Rika, during the last couple days, Rika gives him the head pat, and Satoko's like, you're not reacting to my shenanigans anymore. React, come on. You're a replacement for my big brother, maybe. I'm not going to say he's definitely clinically depressed, but the guy is sad a lot of the time and seems to struggle a lot with feeling happy. He clearly like valued that time. He talked about like how that past moment was the happiest days of his life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which again, not to deride that, but like if those are the happiest days, you're like, you telling me you had nothing that you found happy about the rest of your life up to this point?
See, I think this is another case. We're doing a lot of reading in, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm definitely reading into a lot of things.
I can say lots of things were the happiest days of my life, but that doesn't mean I've never been happy on any other.
True.
It just means I really valued one part.
Yeah. There are definitely some ways in which I'm framing things in order to help make this argument here. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm 100% aware of that. But yeah, I don't think it's unfounded to assert that he's just sad.
Do you think he changed over the course of the story, or he was always this way?
I think it's likely that this is something that he's always had with him. At the beginning of the story, he's got a lot of new things happening. He's a new kid in town. He's got friends who are eager to like forcibly insert themselves into his life and keep him getting up every day, going out and doing things. He's got new and exciting things to keep himself occupied. I feel like for the first bit of this month, he's just been out and doing things with his friends and hasn't really been alone enough and had that kind of mind space to think about it. Right? It's not until like folks kind of go their own separate ways for a while when the dread starts to kind of seep back in, which again is consistent with like, at least with, like parts of my experience with depression. Like things can't, it's not to say that things can't be good, right? I always had fun hanging out with friends and doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that going for you, you don't tend to feel as sad for a while. You can go a while without that rearing its head. It doesn't mean that it's not there. But we know people started to drift off for a while in preparation of the festival. They came back together, but immediately after that, murders happened. We know that he starts letting some of his paranoia about the motivations of people around him start building up in his head very quickly. And it seems like he quickly relapses back to something more familiar with like, I'm sad, I'm alone, I can't trust anyone else, I feel like I'm going to die. Again, completely independent of anything else, that sounds like a very accurate description of depression.
I don't know. I've been clinically depressed, and I've never felt like I feel like there's a big difference between I feel like I'm going to die and I feel like I am going to be murdered.
Okay, maybe that's not the best one, but like, I feel like I can't trust my friends. I feel like I can't talk to them about what's going on. I feel like I can't talk to my parents about what's going on. I feel like I'm alone and no one will understand me. That definitely speaks like that to me.
Okay.
Yeah, argue with me in the comments if you want.
Let's talk about some other Keiichi stuff then.
Yes, please. I've got so much to say about Keiichi.
So he's got a lot of parallels with a couple of other specific characters. I'd like to talk about parallels with 3 specific characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Parallel. All right, literary parallel time. Let's do this.
And not necessarily literary parallel, because I'm not good at literary analysis, so I don't know what that means.
So we're not going to pull out the Holden Caulfield here?
What?
All of his friends are phonies.
Oh, no, I mean in this story.
Oh, okay. I know, but I was
sorry.
Being a little bit facetious.
I did not catch what you meant, and I was very confused by what you meant by literary parallels, because I did not realize that that's what we were talking about.
That's fine.
So, anyway.
What do we got?
So, first character is Tomitake. Both of them are folks who aren't from here, come to town, get involved with this circle of girls, and then fucking get killed in the same horrific way. kind of close to each other. What's going on there? Why are those parallels a thing?
Why are those parallels a thing? Gosh, I don't know. I don't know that like, because Tomitake isn't exactly an outsider.
That's true.
Yeah, according to him, he had been coming to. Hold on, I've got my page on Tomitake notes in here. Because according to himself, he had been coming to town. He had been in Hinamizawa before the dam incident. He doesn't sound like he lived there. Right now, we know he was living out of a cheap hotel, and he comes to visit Hinamizawa 2 to 3 times a year. But people in town know him. People were gossiping about how he and Mio were going to get eloped, right? Like he is a known quantity. I don't think it's a perfect comparison that he is someone fresh in town like Keiichi is, their first time in this place. Even if he's not a Hinamizawan, the people there know him. He is still someone who comes there 2 to 3 times a year, ostensibly to photograph birds seasonally, and also is not a real person. What I'm saying is Keiichi isn't a real person. Honestly, one of the things I've really struggled with is why he's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have like some like a really out there idea, but no matter what it is, it doesn't feel like he should have died. It doesn't or if he is the one that was to die this year, it feels like there's more stuff, there's something else about him that I'm not recognizing. There's more to him that I don't know. And given that he is a literal non-person, apparently, as far as the legal system is concerned, that seems to be the case. Tomitake not having a legal identity is really interesting. No license, travels by a bike, resides in a cheap hotel. Since we don't know who he is, but he is known by the locals, that I don't know that he slots in nicely into any of our unknown characters in this story. Because there are a couple of people who... I know we started talking about parallels, but now I'm talking about Tomitake.
That's fine.
Yeah, I know there are a couple of people in this story who could conceivably still be alive. When the beginning of the game starts. The perpetrator of the dam site dismemberment or the foreman, not both, but one of those two. The Mrs. Hojo, Mrs. Furude, Satoshi. Could still, because he went missing, right? And I've got my thoughts on Satoshi. We'll get there. And Mio. I get who Mio went missing in the era, but Tomitake doesn't really like slot in well to any of those. So it's kind of hard to figure out what his angle is on all this. I don't know that we've heard of any other like, and Satoko's uncle, right? Those are all like people who like are on the periphery of this story, who could still conceivably be around but just aren't. And when we have an unknown person like Tomitake, my instinct is like, could he be any one of these people? But he doesn't really seem to fit in well to any of those.
Yeah.
It could be that maybe he was the main instigator of the dam dismemberment. Might explain why he knows it and why he's kind of laying low since then. Why he's gotten tanned and buff.
Giving clues to some random kid then, though.
That's why he's all tan and buff now. But again, right? Like it feels weird. Like why is he so open and known in the area then? Especially for someone who was there before that. And that's why it's so difficult for me to answer the parallels question, because I don't know. I legitimately, and this is still hard for me to wrap my head around. I don't know why he's dead.
That's fine.
I don't know why he's targeted.
I don't know is a valid answer.
I have some conception of why Keiichi winds up dead, because he forcefully and loudly keeps poking at parts of this the conspiracy around Oyashiro-sama's curse, and makes himself a target for, like, he makes himself unavoidable to the people who are trying to keep up this fiction, because he keeps asking certain people certain questions and won't shut up about it. So unless Tomitake was doing something similar, well, you know, again, like I remember I pitched earlier, he might have been like a journo or something trying to get, but it doesn't seem like it. He just seemed like a nice guy. He did have that one very poignant and meaningful conversation with Mion and Keiichi during the Watanagashi, right? Where like, no, you're a real resident of Hinamizawa. That seemed to have some subtext to it that I still can't really decipher. And I wonder if part of that might have been what led to him dying. Or like he had some awareness ahead of time that he might be dying. But I don't know. Tomitake is the one that is giving me the most trouble right now. I legitimately just, I've got nothing but question marks about this guy, and I feel like I've done a lot of work trying to dig around what scraps of information we do get about him, and I can't. I got nothing.
All right. Let's talk about another parallel.
Sure.
Another character parallel.
Yeah.
Between Keiichi and Rena.
Yep.
Both of them are seemingly normal students. Both of them end up suffering from some sort of psychological disturbance. Both of them end up going bat crazy and injuring folks close to them from school.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them seem pretty convinced that Oyashiro-sama has something to do with it all.
Yep.
That's kind of weird. What's up there?
Yeah.
Oh, and also, there's, again, that theme of, you know, Rena was here, and then in Hinamizawa, and then left, and then just came back.
Yep. And then just came back. I don't know if that's meant to imply Keiichi also lived here to begin with.
I don't think we got any such implication. It'd be weird if he just lived here for a while and
then
never
lived
said
in the city
so.
for 10 years and then came back. Right? He said he lived in the city for 10 years. So even if he did leave in Hinamizawa as a kid, it was like as an infant. So like it doesn't matter. I feel like the parallel between those two is a lot more poignant, because it seems like Rena is in some ways for Keiichi like who he could have been. Like the person who moved into town and got ingratiated with the people, learned the secrets, and is now doing his part to keep things going along, right? That could, like, Keiichi looks at that and like, that could have been me in another year, but I don't understand why things had to turn out the way they did, but they did instead. I'm not sure how much of Rena's backstory I actually believe, for other reasons. Just because like so much of it is like the parts of it, like the whole thing about the whole scene that Keiichi imagined with her going with the window by window with the baseball bat. That's all him imagining that. As far as the school is concerned, it never happened. The school denies that it happened. The 3 purported victims will not talk about it, even though Rena is no longer there. Even though like supposedly the one that's putting pressure on them isn't there anymore, they still will not talk about it. Ooishi himself admits that it all seems to be speculation and hearsay. And it's interesting that they bring up her dysautonomia. Because I'm still not sure how that's meant to be an explanation for her cracking windows.
Yeah, that's not really what dysautonomia does.
Yeah, it's like I get her getting counseling and medication for stuff. If that indeed did happen, I could see that it leading to like, hey, maybe we should have you talk to someone real quick. But her diagnosis seems completely. Again, not a medical expert. That diagnosis seems to have very little to do with what, at least from my very basic research, seems to have very little to do with what she is actually claimed to have done. I don't know. So when I think about the two of them side by side, it's like I can't help but feel like Rena is meant to be like, this is... If Tomitake is like Keiichi's worst fears for how things could turn out, the out-of-towner who is immediately lynched and, killed as an example, Rena seems to be like how he hopes things could go, or how he wants them to be. Making new friends, being a part of the community, everything smiles and hunky-dory. At least in his eyes.
Okay. Let's talk about one more parallel then.
Yeah, parallels.
Let's talk about Satoshi.
Yeah.
Another... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, picking up that bad.
Yeah, another person who lived around here in Hinamizawa, was a sort of older brother figure for the club. Literally an older brother.
Literally an older brother.
Satoko.
Yep.
Who apparently started losing it a little bit, stopped trusting people, started carrying a bat around.
Yeah.
And in a way that Rena says was just like what Keiichi did.
Yeah.
And who then transfers out.
Transfers out. Transfers out. Yep.
What's going on there? What's that parallel?
In Keiichi's mind, Satoshi acting the way he does is scary to him because it's removing his agency. It's making... If Satoshi did the exact same things that Keiichi did, then Keiichi's not in charge of what he's doing here. His actions have been predetermined, seemingly. And he's not in as much in control of the situation as he wants to be. If he and Satoshi are doing the same things, then they're probably going to share the same fate, and he feels all the more doomed for it. I feel like there's almost this feeling of resignation, that's the word, to how Keiichi relates to Satoshi. Especially when Rena points out, like, no, you're doing the exact same thing. Almost this feeling of like this fear of inevitability. Like, am I really just going to end up like he did? Like, he seemed to have. If he's going through the same thing I did, was he trying to fight back as well? And if so, did he get transferred for it? And that because that's it's clear by the end, like he is consumed with that thought of being transferred like Satoshi. That is the exact word and phrasing. He doesn't want to be transferred like Satoshi was. It's specifically his fear of having the same fate befall him that befell Satoshi that is driving him at the very end. And pour one out for Satoko. Mom dead, or dad dead, mom missing, step aunt dead, step uncle deadbeat, or uncle deadbeat, big brother missing, and yet she's just gremlining on.
Replacement big brother also now dead.
Oh no! Well, and not to mention her big sis Rena. She calls Rena her big sis pretty specifically. And I can't help but feel that maybe old Uncle Mion might have been at some level for Satoko's benefit. Like, don't worry, you can have an adult in your life as a treat.
You seem to keep running out, so I will try to fill that role for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, either that or she's. I already said what I think about Mion being Uncle Mion. Not in this recording, I haven't. I'm pretty sure it's either her trying to be a parent, like an older parental figure for Satoko's benefit, or playing the part of someone who is carrying out Oyashiro-sama's will. This old man literally being meant to be like, oh, I am Oyashiro.
Now, this is a total tangent from the question here, but I am interested in what that would mean. Why would she pretend to be Oyashiro-sama for those girls?
I mean, not just for them. I mean, like, that's presumably part of whatever fiction that her family wants to maintain.
Oh, so this is a fiction that specifically Mion is the instrument of Oyashiro-sama's wrath? Is that what you were maintaining?
You know what? I hadn't, but now that you've said it like that, yes, I'm committing to this.
Okay.
Specifically Mion. You fuck with me. It makes sense. You fucked with Mion, and now you're gonna have to deal with Oyashiro-sama's wrath.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I know that's a tangent. I didn't mean to.
So
anyway, back to Satoshi.
Yeah, do you have more about Satoshi, or?
I think he's still around.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Where?
Do we want to do this now? Do we want to do this now? Because I am committed to this.
How about we just say where, and we can talk about it in more depth later.
Okay.
I just want to know.
I think Satoshi is right there with them the entire time.
Okay, bold. We'll get into that in a bit then. Okay. One last thing about Keiichi then before we move on from that.
Sure. I love talking about Keiichi and his family because, God, there's so much I don't know about them.
So, how and why does Keiichi die?
How and why does Keiichi die? Yep. Keiichi eventually dies because he fucking killed Rena and Mion. I assume the group that finds him and that he's worried about are people working for the Sonozakis. And it's like, well, the fuck have you done? But A, you killed Mion and Rena. What the fuck, man? And B, great. Now we have to make it look like a fucking curse did it. So come here. We're gonna garrot you and then leave you in hypovolemic shock in a phone booth.
That's interesting. So on your theory, they are strangling him while he's talking to the police on the phone?
I don't know that they're strangling him while he's talking to the police, but it definitely seems like either like they're pressuring Keiichi into giving that phone testimony to help sell the thing before he sell the thing before he dies. Right. I without spoiling when this happens, I remember like talking about people talk like the testimonies people give over the phone when we were playing Umineko. I won't say what particular scene it becomes involved in, but I feel like we don't see what happens there, and I think it's reasonable to assume either he might have been compelled to sell that part at the very end there.
Seems
You called the manager and you called the doctor. You called in the old play director, and then you gave him a fucking messy ass thing to improvise over. So he did his best.
All right. You mentioned the manager, so
yep.
Let's talk about that real quick.
The manager and the doctor.
Who or what is up with that? The manager and the doctor.
The manager and the doctor. The doctor might just literally be a doctor who, like, you got to have a medical guy on staff to, like, help sell this stuff. Makes sense. That's fine. The police seem to know who, like, the doctor was. So maybe it is just, like, a local figure. I feel like I really don't know much about the doctor.
From space, has a long scarf, travels through time in its phone booth. The doctor.
Yeah, sure. Fine. I'm not a Doctor Who fan. Nothing against it. Just ain't my cup of tea. The manager, I have some more thoughts on, though.
Yeah.
Because the description Rena gives of the manager, again, someone she supposedly knows, is quite telling. Being part construction site overseer, part play director. That certainly seems like someone who might, like, the person in charge of the lore Bible on the TV show that is Oyashiro-sama's Curse. the guy who's in charge of being like, all right, here's what we need to have happen in order for this story to sell for another season here. When you're trying to create an all-pervasive fiction, you got to have someone who's in charge of making sure stuff still makes internal sense.
Okay.
And it makes sense to bring in someone like have someone whose job it is to be like, all right, this is what's going to happen in season 3, episode 2 of The Curse.
I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in your gears then.
Okay, great.
If this is the case, why are they calling him at all when Keiichi is in his house with Mion and Rena? Because we were operating under the theory that all Mion did was write on his shirt, get well soon, feel better. Because
Keiichi made himself such a thorn in their side that they had no choice but to bring him in on it so he would stop fucking yelling about it. Come on, guy. Can't you get with the program here?
Okay, so on this reading, that scene is where they're about to spill it all. They're about to let Keiichi in on the conspiracy, and he misinterprets it and kills them? Is that what you're
He misinterprets
advancing?
it and runs the hell away.
And kills them first, and then runs away.
Kills. Oh, sorry, them. When you're saying them,
Rena and Mion.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then kills Rena and Mion. Yeah, basically. That is what I think is happening there. I think they were on the precipice of being like, you've made yourself such a thorn in our side about this. You've gone by blabbing your mouth all the time that we have to bring you in on this now. Thanks. We were trying to save you from having to do this, but I guess, great.
Why wouldn't they say that's what they're doing to him if that's what they were doing?
Because they're kids.
Okay.
Because they're kids, and I don't think they think they're in that kind of danger at the moment. They think their friend is sick and bedridden, and they're like, they've been acting weird, but like, it's okay now. Things are okay. Like, we're talking, we're having fun. This is normal. Things can still be normal, right? Right? If we just tell Keiichi enough, things can be normal again. I just want to have a normal childhood. Why can't I have a normal childhood? Why do I have to do this? And for years on end, for repentance for like the one fucking thing that happened with the site foreman 4 or 5 years ago. Mion just can't get a break is what I'm saying.
Okay, so you brought something up.
I did.
I imagine you'll want to talk about, and that's your theory that... Do we have time on this, rolling on this for that, or do we need to...
Is that what's next on the list of questions?
It wasn't. It's going in wherever, and this felt like a good time.
Okay. About Satoshi's whereabouts?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that now. So this originally started out as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we were playing Rena trans theory, right? Just makes sense. She's into pickles. Do you know a cis girl who eats pickles? No, you don't.
I mean, yes. Millions of people love pickles because they are a superior food item that is delicious and good for you.
Nah, pickles are ass, actually. I don't care for pickles. But like it was just kind of a joke that I made while we were playing through.
Mm-hmm.
However, as soon as Satoshi entered the picture, I'm like, oh, stop, you're dead naming her. I was like, oh, this is funny, right? Like, this isn't... But no. A whole lot of things make some more sense if you assume that Satoshi is Rena.
What things are those?
It explains where Satoshi disappeared to.
Where did Satoshi disappear? Oh, Satoshi didn't disappear.
Satoshi didn't disappear. He transitioned. Transferred. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Satoshi transferred to a different school and left Rena. Explains why Mion seems... Or not Mion. Explains why Satoko doesn't... calls her like, oh, it's Big Sis Rena. And then not just like, oh yeah, not just Big Sis Rena, but oh, she's my big sis. Explains why Rena knows so much about high school baseball despite not playing on a high school baseball team. Explains why she's into pickles. I already mentioned that.
Explains the whole dead naming aside.
Yeah, right. Explains right. Exactly. Like stop. Like explains why they're so awkward and uncomfortable about bringing it up because Satoshi, if Satoshi no longer being there, transferred, we don't know to where, or it's never, I mean, obviously we don't know where because, that's part of why it's like, ooh, transferred. It doesn't work if you keep bringing it up. If you keep kind of like hammering it in there, especially when the person who was Satoshi is right there, it's going to make it really uncomfortable for everyone involved. That's it.
Okay.
I want to be clear. This theory started as a joke, might still be a joke, but also is working remarkably well. The one thing.
The one thing.
The thing that would make this difficult to believe is that Rena's backstory, while largely, is not entirely compatible with Satoshi's. Supposedly, the Ryugus lived in Hinamizawa, moved to Ibaraki Prefecture, where Rena had this episode, broke all the windows, blamed Oyashiro-sama, and then moved back. Conveniently, hers is the entire backstory that we would cast the most doubt on. Remember, the school denies that this ever happened. The people who it supposedly happened to won't talk about it even though Rena isn't there. Like, she's not the one that put the pressure on them for that story. The whole thing about, like, her seeing Oyashiro-sama every night, she never talks about that at all anymore. But, it's very dramatized for the sake of the person who's the medical professionals tending to her. And we never see the rest of her family. Where are these pillars of the community, the Ryugu family that supposedly moved away, then moved back? We don't know shit about Rena's family.
Yeah.
I brought this up a while ago. Where's her mom and dad? Where is anyone else in the Ryugu family? I fully admit my Satoshi's Rena theory is based in a very silly long shot. But the thing that would kill it is Rena actually having parents with that actually went through that all and can be like, oh yeah, sure, we moved there, no, we moved back, and we never see them. Never. Conveniently, hers are the only parents that not just aren't confirmed dead or alive, aren't even fucking mentioned.
Yeah.
Mion's folks aren't mentioned, but we do mention other parts of her family, like the Sonozakis exist. We don't know anything about the Ryugu family other than that they are legendarily good at making pickles.
Fair enough.
Common knowledge that the Ryugu family's traditional pickles are delicious.
Common knowledge in the pickling world.
Painfully common knowledge in the pickling world.
So,
but if we do, and also one of the detail that makes more sense if the two are the same. This was according to the timeline of events, Rena would have moved back to Hinamizawa in 1982. And her presence is what starts the club, right? She and Mion and Satoko and Rika and Satoshi start the club, presumably Satoshi. And Satoshi doesn't go missing until after the Watanagashi, which means the whole club, they were all there for it. However, this year, 1983, was the first year that they had the 5-demon firefight and not the 4-demon firefight. Also would have a good reason for, if Satoshi transferred away, why is his shit still lying around? Why are we why are people acting like, oh, that's important, that's someone's bat, not someone who transferred away that I have to, it's like, okay, clearly doesn't want it anymore, but someone who might still be around, who knows a lot about baseball, including the Southpaw from that one school that you should really watch out for.
On this theory, is that the bat? Is that the bat that was used to permanently maim another child in Ibaraki?
I'm not sure that a bat was used in that maiming, but I'm more convinced that was done by the Sonozakis in order to sell that part of the story.
What was done by the Sonozakis?
Putting the pressure on the kids to tell that story that they were attacked by Rena with a bat.
But that's the exact thing they were pressured not to tell. They were pressured to say absolutely nothing.
Right, but they also don't deny that the event happened. They won't say anything about what happened.
Yeah, if you wanted to spread a story of an event, you wouldn't do it by pressuring folks not to tell that account.
No, but you would also pressure them not to say that, like, hey, You can't say that we're using this to help generate believability for this idea of Oyashiro-sama's curse targeting people who've moved away from the town. This, again, Ryugu family, well known. We see them all the time. Talk of the town that definitely exist.
It would be weird for someone to deliberately try and set up a rumor of a thing by trying to make it not be discussed and not be investigated. And then
they won't talk about it because like they're being threatened by the Sonozakis to stick to this story.
They're being threatened to not tell the story that Rena did it, right? They're not telling. They are saying nothing. They're refusing to give statements.
Right, and so which means that they're not contradicting the story that's being put out there, which is the important part. If they were talking, then they would and saying something different, they would threaten what is now the dominant narrative.
But you were just saying that there wasn't another narrative of this, that it was all just hearsay, and that.
No, because it's important for the idea of the curse that there be this narrative that Oyashiro-sama even reached this one girl who had tried to move away. And look what it made her do to the school she was at. That helps sell their idea of this curse being a real thing that you can't move away from. It's important that narrative stand unchallenged, is my point.
And what about the kid who's blind in one eye now?
Yeah.
Did the Sonozakis go and blind a kid?
Yeah, fuck him.
Okay.
Fuck him. Fuck that kid. Is what I'm saying.
And everybody else involved in this story, the hospital that Ooishi managed to leverage some info out of despite patient confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
That's not accurate. The Sonozakis got to them.
You're right that this would seem to have a lot going, that this would require a lot, but I would remind you, they do have a, not just a, but the doctor.
In Ibaraki?
I don't know. Fucking, I don't know. Maybe if they're so committed to make... Again, I feel like this is the point. Like, having this theory be real requires so many things to just be willfully ignored.
I'm not even on trans Rena theory right now. I'm just on the, like, what does the doubt of Rena's backstory get us, and how are we doubting it?
I'm doubting it because... again, Ooishi doubts it. No one seems to talk about it. There's no corroborating evidence.
Ooishi
like there
doubts
are.
It?
Ooishi even notes that. Hold on, I've got. You're gonna fucking call me out. I will. Come on, I knew this was here. Please, did I not write this down? Fuck.
Because there was definitely stuff about him saying it was all hearsay and so on and couldn't be corroborated. But that's a really different sentence than I doubt this. That's a really different sentence.
He admits that a lot of what he has is speculation, and that Rena has never been linked to any of the other curse cases.
Yep.
In that the school denies the event ever happened, and none of the people who were supposedly victims of it filed charges. Again, so no one's there to challenge the dominant narrative, which is what they want for this idea of the curse being so far-reaching to stick. Again, I'm not committed to this, but what if? Yeah. Wouldn't you rather believe in a world where I was right about this? Wouldn't you rather this be the case? I know that I would, and I think that with the power of love, you too can see things my way.
I promise I'm not trying to tell you don't believe in your theory or that it's wrong. It's just like you keep on saying things that are not in that text. And like, I'm pretty sure he doesn't say he doubts that Rena did these things. I'm pretty sure he says that it's all hearsay and everyone refuses to corroborate it.
I thought that he said that he had doubts about the... It might
and to say I have doubts about the
which
accounts is very different as well.
Yes,
and that's really what I'm trying to get into here. And what I was trying to do earlier as well with some of these things where I was digging in on, like, what do we mean when we're talking about whether Keiichi is hallucinating or making things up or lying to himself. It feels pretty important to, like, get clear on what we're saying.
Right. Hopefully, was I clear about with the delusion stuff earlier? I thought I had been, but maybe I wasn't.
Well, we discussed it. And
yeah, we talked about it at length. Oh.
All right. So let's talk a bit about belonging. We've talked about insiders and outsiders, about people coming and going, about being able to trust or not trust one's family and friends. Do you think that there's an in-group and out-group, or that there are in-groups and out-groups? And if so, what do you think it's about? And who's in and not in?
I think there is definitely an in-group in the sense that, like, I do believe that there's a conspiracy. And that necessarily creates an in-group. I think Rena...
Who's in on it?
Huh?
Who's in on it?
I think Rena and Mion are. For sure, because they're the ones that are like, Keiichi, okay, fucking fine if you're going to keep being like this. I don't think Satoko is in on it. Or maybe I don't want to believe because she's a precious little gremlin bean and I don't want anything bad to happen to her. She's already had so many bad things happening to her. Just let her be. I think Rika probably knows what's going on, but for other reasons that are spoilery. I do think that there's like there's no doubt a sense of community engendered by like something like the Onikakushi Defense League being created. Like there is certainly a sense of like, we grew up here, we defended this place, we are from here.
We built this city on rock and roll.
Something like that. But as we noticed, that doesn't, like, the community's version of that is not so small as to not include people like Tomitake. Remember, he people knew him and were, like, happily gossiping about how he was gonna, elope with Mio someday. Like, their version of, like, the community's version of what it means to be on the in-group isn't as like exclusive or restrictive as the worst fears of as Keiichi's worst fears for what Oyashiro-sama's curse was doing. Like, oh, if you just move away, it'll get you. Oh, you haven't lived here since if you haven't lived here all your life, it'll get you. I don't think the community's sense of in-group is that exclusive. I think they likely would have welcomed Keiichi into it. I think most people probably think of him as like a member of the community, even after only being there a month. People are already talking to him. People see him on the same route every morning when they're walking by, being like, "Oh, where's Rena?" Like they know Keiichi. They're happy to have him here. It's him who's convinced himself he's not allowed to be a part of that group. But the group he's conflating the conspiracy that actually exists with this sense of community among the people living there. In his mind, they're one and the same. The in-group is the community that lives there, and they are also this conspiracy. Whereas I'm asserting that, no, that he's already a part of the town. It's just that he's not a part of the conspiracy, and the conspiracy happens to overlap with with two people of the town in particular that he talks to every single day.
Who else is in the in-group? We've talked about two people, but it's presumably not just those two. We've talked about the Sonozakis.
Yep.
So that's probably part of it.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Likely that would mean the mayor as well.
Okay.
Since we know the mayor is connected to the family as well as the any else of the Sonozaki family. I don't know that anyone else has to be in on it. I have some like pie in the sky, just like shot in the dark guesses, but like maybe Keiichi's parents might be an explanation for what they're actually doing.
Okay, hold up. We gotta talk about that. So how and why and what? How did we get here?
I told you it was a shot in the dark. But you can't deny that there is like Keiichi's parents are very, very suspicious.
Are they?
Immensely so.
In what way?
Nothing about them and their purported job makes any sense.
Really?
Yes. So his dad is purportedly a painter and the breadwinner for the family, and his mother's just a homemaker. She doesn't have a job as far as anyone is made aware. Keiichi believes his dad's the breadwinner, and from what we talked about this while we were actually playing through, his actual job is that he's an artist. He's kind of like a mid-tier artist, can't make enough to live off of doing like gallery showings and stuff. He wants to someday, but it seems to make enough by doing freelance work, landscape paintings, writing articles for magazines and stuff like that. And that's how the family makes their money. Now, what do we actually... However, this freelance artist gig for magazines or whatever apparently is important enough that he and his wife will drop everything at the drop of a hat to get on a train to Tokyo that same day just to have an in-person conversation that they can't have over the phone.
I don't see what's weird about that.
What about painting is so goddamn important you have to go halfway across the island to talk about it that same day?
Lots of people who write for magazines have to travel to specific places at specific times.
Oh, absolutely. Keiichi notes that his dad does that all the time.
Yeah.
But
his dad does that all the time.
His dad does that all the time when it's planned in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes his dad has to go places. Why does his mom have to come with him? If they're
maybe his mom wants to. Maybe go to Tokyo's nice. She could be tired of small town Hinamizawa life.
Sure, but do you think she wants to leave her kid alone after her kid is like, I think I might die?
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, and it's like I don't believe that a painting job for freelancing for a magazine is so important that when your son is clearly in distress, you drop everything, go to Tokyo to deal with it, and just be like, oh, fuck, sorry, Keiichi, maybe we'll have your girlfriend come over and make dinner for you. I also don't know that someone like that buys and specifically builds, like Maebara was built for them, purpose built, a gigantic place that is like 2/3 not living space. They only live in a third of it. The other 2/3 are used for work and studio and gallery stuff. A gallery that he wants to be able to open someday, but hasn't been able to draw on enough like notoriety to sustain that yet. I could see building a studio into your home, but no, the dude's built like what looks like a barn almost. Like this is, and it's described in the game as huge. It's got a huge gate, an entirely dedicated a gate that's the game notes is specifically big enough to fit a truck. By the way, garage for the car that is never closed, and a separate studio entrance. And Keiichi doesn't know what like 2/3 of his own house looks like. That's weird.
I don't think that's was stated.
Weird.
He doesn't state he doesn't know what 2/3 of it looks like.
He doesn't go in it.
Yeah, he doesn't go in it. That's not the same as I've never been in it and don't know what's in it.
Hold on. No.
I didn't go in my grandpa's office when I was living with them, but that's because it was boring and not because it was a secret to me.
Purpose built deep in the mountains, a place noted where no matter how loud you were, no one would be able to hear you all around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe for a moment that the Maebara family that his dad is only a painter. Maybe he is actually a painter. Maybe that's how he's getting most of his money. It seems like something else is going on. Something else that he needed to move. Something else that he specifically had to move to the mountains to build what is, let's say it like it is, a fucking murder house.
What gives you that impression?
It's specifically in the middle of the mountains, far enough away so no one else will be able to hear you from anything else. Like that, like they built this house. They chose everything about it.
Yeah.
So the decision to be so far away from everyone else, it's a decision to have so much extra space in it for someone. If you're a painter, you need a studio. Sure, you don't need a studio that's 2/3 the size of your house.
You might.
Maybe. Are you like doing? But like, if you are, you're not just painting landscapes for magazines. What are you doing, Mr. Maebara? What is your actual deal? What is so important about this writing for magazines gig that you gotta drop everything and travel so far? What are you hiding, Mr. Maebara? Are you actually the manager? I think you might be.
Okay,
I think you might be.
Spin that out.
Mr. Maebara might be the manager.
He didn't live here until this year.
Yeah. Why would you? You don't shit where you eat.
So despite not living or going to Hinamizawa until now, he's been secretly from the shadows plotting murders for the Sonozaki family from Tokyo, but then later moving there.
Gig pays well. Why not? Maybe that's how he's actually getting it. How else does a freelance painter that's apparently afford a house like that? Okay, I know it's the 80s, but still, how?
It's the 80s, and it's also in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere.
Where houses are much cheaper.
In the middle of nowhere, with no one else around. Don't worry about it. Making sure big enough to fit a van that you don't own. What are you hiding, Mr. Maebara? I need to know.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, so that's that.
So legitimately, I think one of the biggest unanswered questions I have,
Mm-hmm.
and something I want to see more of, I think we will see more of going forward, is what is Keiichi's home situation like?
Okay.
What do his parents actually? What is his relationship like with his parents? What was his life like before being here? What does his family actually do? I don't think the answer is going to be unimportant.
Okay.
I likely am completely off base, but I do think that all those questions are very important, and it's clear I'm kind of straining at the bounds of what I have left in of what this episode is giving us in terms of details.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, and another important detail, the note. The note that Keiichi only told his folks about is part of the staging for when he murdered Rena and Mion. Remember, they go in specifically to rip out a couple lines from the middle of his note. Only his folks knew it was there. And Mion, even though she was casing the joint, died before she could tell anyone else. So either they just happened to find it, which, okay, maybe. Why are you looking behind a dead kid's clock when there are two bodies in the room? Or the Maebaras knew about that, and because they're on the job now, they're like, fuck, okay, I guess we can use this. All right. I'm just saying. Whatever their deal is, we clearly do not have the full picture.
Okay.
And I don't expect. I do expect that whatever the full picture of Keiichi's family life is, that will be important.
Fair enough.
Whether or not they actually turn out to be murder artists, martists, maybe. Who knows?
Let's talk about something else.
Really? Okay, fine. You don't want me to talk about Murder House more? Murder House with the gate big enough specifically as described by the narration to fit a van. I know what you're hiding. A truck.
And nobody living in rural areas buys trucks. That's sus.
No one in rural areas buys a white van, a white unmarked van. It smells to me is what it does.
So, I want to talk about who and what can we trust. We talked about that a lot with regards to Keiichi already. But we know from other Ryokishi things. Yep. He loves mystery and paranoia and unreliable narrators and stuff like that.
Yep.
And we suspect some of that's going on with Keiichi. What about the rest? What else do you feel is more trustable or less trustable? Anything that sticks out to you as something we should hold firm to or something we should highly doubt?
I mean, I've already brought up that, like, completely independent of my desire for trans Rena theory to be real, there is a notable lack of documentation surrounding the incident at her school. Like a lot, at least with all of the other incidents from Oyashiro-sama's curse, the dam incident, the falling incident, the Shinto priest's death, not the housewife murder, but like those were all reported. There's documentation to that effect. They did happen. It's not just a bunch of people getting together and saying, we all agree this happened, right? We all agree. Yeah, okay. Whereas that, like, notably, that, like, all we have regarding Rena's break at her old school is just this story that seems to kind of like exist in the ether, independent of anyone claiming it actually happened to them. There are a couple of other things that are potential. Like I don't know if people picked up on this while I was talking, referencing my own notes. I've been diligently like keeping track of who claims what. as I've been trying to reference facts and stuff. Because like it could be the case that someone like Tomitake has his own agenda in what he shares with Keiichi and what his versions of events are. People's versions of events often, even the ones we know did happen, like don't always perfectly line up with one another, or leave out details that seem salient when someone else brings them up. Like we get a bunch of different descriptions of like what happened, to lead up to the dismemberment at the dam incident, and while not all mutually exclusive, they all paint like very different pictures of like what led to it and what the general feelings among the people there were like. So I guess in that sense, like it's despite even with the events that we do know did happen, we have a comparative paucity of like hard knowable data on them. A lot of like even the damn dismemberment thing has become almost not historical, but it's been long enough that people's stories and the versions of it they tell are slightly different from one another in ways that do paint different pictures of the people involved in their motivations. In one telling of the dam incident, it seems like they were all coerced by the main perpetrator to by the main offender to go along with the thing and dismember the body and bury all those bits. In another one, it seems like it's a natural conclusion to the community's like slow building resentment toward the dam encroaching on their land. On another one, it seems like it was just the result of like a drunken dispute that got out of hand, and everyone came together to kind of clean it up. On another, it looks like it was just a setup and they rolled the next day because that's supposed to be what the story was. Even for this event that we know happened, like it's still hard to trust it's still hard to trust any of these individual versions of events at face value. Even for the stuff that like we supposedly have that documentation. Which is how it ties into the question you were asking, which I've now. And for Keiichi himself, I trying my damnedest to not just fall back on doubting everything because I can, because like if I'm doubting what he has given us reason, self-reportedly even, to doubt what he's seeing and what he's saying is happening. He he has given us numerous reasons to doubt him as a narrator.
Mm-hmm.
But if we just assume he's doing that willy-nilly, then like I could assume that Kenta-kun was actually a body he and Rena found in a dump. But if I assume that, then like, why? What does that actually get me? You know what I mean? It's weird they pulled it away in a tarp. And it's weird that, Rena apparently lives around such strange ornamentation in a building that was retrofitted to, not a family home, by the way, a building that was repurposed into her home. Again, where are the Ryugus at? I need to know. But like doubting that scene, like what does it actually get me? What am I actually learning or supposing from that?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm always the one who's like, but what do we get from that? And now you're doing it.
I do it too. It's just sometimes my desire to have a certain thing be true outweighs my desire to be, what does that actually mean? So unless we find out Rena lives in a morgue or something come chapter 5, then I'm not going to doubt just yet that Kenta-kun was actually a figurine, a life-size figurine. The reason why I could so easily doubt the syringe and pen at the end is because there is a good explanation. Like we know Keiichi at that point is under an immense amount of stress and has self-described that under those situations he sometimes won't always register what his eyes are seeing immediately and will jump to the worst possible conclusions. And we know Mion carries a marker on her. That seems pretty open and shut. That doesn't seem hard to doubt.
All right.
I guess my thing is like I know I can doubt Keiichi, and especially when he seems really convinced that there's something following him. No, Dude, there weren't nothing. The point of that scene in front of your door was just to show exactly how unreliable you are when you are certain something is happening. I know we talked, like, they even brought it up in the after party. Like, what is the point of that scene then? Like, is it just a delusion? No. The point of that scene is that Keiichi says directly, turns to the camera and says, I am certain something happened here. And nothing, and clearly nothing happened. The point is that we are meant to take away, this is the most blatant example we can show you, that Keiichi will be wrong about what is happening around him. I think that's what I took from it. But I'm not going to just do that willy-nilly unless unless I'm getting something out of it. It seems unhelpful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in where different characters' versions of stories don't line up. I will be interested in... I have an idea of what the framing device is going to look like for this game, so I have an idea of what Chapter 2 might look like. So it'll be interesting to see if we have different versions of events or different tellings of events and how people might act under different circumstances.
All right.
To compare against their prior selves. Meh. That's how I feel about that.
Let's talk about something else.
What are we talking about?
So, we keep on getting this thing brought up in the story, like Keiichi insisting, oh, that couldn't be Rena, that couldn't be Mion, or possession getting brought up, or disguise getting brought up, or dissociation in multiple personalities, or the other me inside me.
Yes.
Do you think that's anything?
I think there's I think there's a couple of different things going on, because like there's this whole Keiichi himself, Rena, and Mion are all portrayed in ways that seem like they're different people, or at least Keiichi sees them as, including himself, as like different people at different times.
Mm-hmm.
With Rena, I think that's easily reconcilable if she was at one point Satoshi, for example. And
does that explain? So Rena is sometimes Satoshi now, and that's what's...
No, but when she is getting this, it's notable that when she gets angry, it tends to be stuff about specifically in relation to Satoshi and his past. It might be easier to look at that instead of her being someone else. It's more like Rena in this moment, her interests are being represented by who she had been at that time. I don't know if that makes sense. It made sense in my head. Mion, I've already floated this before. I think she is just in the sense that there is another Mion inside Mion. I think she is projecting herself as either Oyashiro-sama or his envoy, or just a literal adult figure that is taking like protection of this group of girls. And I think when she goes like all glowy eyes, we're meant to take that as like, oh, like a dramatic vision of like, oh, I'm playing my Oyashiro-sama role right now. And again, if her family is indeed the one behind the curse and all that, it's not so much to assume that she has a role she has to play independent of who she is as a person. Like, she has a role she has to play in keeping up this curse, separate from who she is and what she wants as her own person. And Keiichi has just willingly said he describes like blacking out and doing stuff he doesn't remember all the time. I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and diagnose that, but it definitely seems like when Keiichi's talking about the him inside of him, he's talking about that propensity of his to do things that I willfully or not does not remember and wants to remove himself from. You know, that whole like the TV is running but no one's watching it type thing. 3 different versions, but I think that's at least my explanation right now for how what the narration might be meaning by there's different versions of these characters. I don't I had in my notes for a while bandying about the idea that maybe there was a second Rena or like a twin Rena or something like that. Because that would explain a few things if there was. We don't have any reason to assume that's the case right now, so like I'm not gonna invoke that. But
I love that theory though.
Why?
Extra Renas.
2 Renas, maybe more. Unless we start learning stuff about her family or reasons for there to be more Renas, I'm not going to keep going with that. But like, it has crossed my mind that they're like, what other explanations are there?
The unknown Rena X.
Yeah, like I have thought about like, could people be disguising? Could people there be twins? Could twins be invoked at some point? I don't see any reason to invoke those things just yet. I'm open to it, but like so far nothing we've seen needs to involve that.
Yeah.
At least IMHO. Again, this is just one person's reading, very, very intense reading of the text, but that's what I got on. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about that. I think for all three of them, it's indicative of something different, but narratively, they can conveniently be presented in a very similar manner, and that kind of helps this strange feeling of otherness. And culturally, it ties in nicely to this idea of being possessed by Oyashiro and becoming a vehicle for his will, which in Mion's case might actually literally be happening. So yeah, I think some of it is just kind of like using these different things, the narrative little trick here, presenting three different things in a very similar way, so we the reader will conflate them.
All right. Let's talk a bit about home lives then. We've talked about some of them. We've talked a fair bit about Mion and what you think is up there. We've talked a fair bit about Satoko.
I haven't talked really about their home lives in detail, but yeah, if we want to go down the line,
sure. If you think you have stuff to say about all of them, yeah, I was just gonna cut those ones out since we already talked about them and it felt like a thing we could shortcut.
Well,
but if you have other stuff that's not covered,
mention.
Then yeah.
Because we know Mion does appear to have working relationships with a lot of members of her family.
Yep.
She has a living uncle who she helps out at his shop in town, right? And she gets paid to do that. So that's we know, and she's got the grandmother, right? Who we know is in some position of power, but we don't know if she's the city council or the assembly member or someone else. We know she has a relative who runs a secondhand clothing shop and supplies the school uniforms for the cast.
Mm-hmm.
It's not clear if that's meant to be the uncle or someone else, but we know she's strapped and seems to have a pretty solid board game collection. Mion's home life right now, I think from the outside would look fine on a casual glance. I think it's really more the fact that something did happen to her in the past, and she is, if my theory about the Sonodaki is right, the idea that she is still being forced to carry out the consequences of that these many years later instead of being able to move on and become her own person. I think that's what's really tragic about Mion's story right now. That she constantly has to live in the shadow of whatever incidents happened between her and the foreman those many years ago, and can't just move on. She now has to be an active participant in the hiding of in the continuing cover up, I guess, of what really happened. That feels really tragic for her. For Rena, we don't know what her home life's like. She likes to make food for people. She makes food for people in town, right? We there was one kid, Kazuma des. That right. Didn't she make food for that son of a family Rena made food for? Yeah. So Rena seems like she's filling the void in her life by becoming a foodie. Making pickles, making food, making like veritable feasts for people, right? Like picnic day, don't worry, Rena's got this.
Yeah.
she's already made a feast for 5. Keiichi's parents are out of town. Don't worry, Miss Maebara, I got your son fed. But also we don't know who her folks are. I think I mentioned it briefly. Let me find out where it was, because I believe it's mentioned she lives in a repurposed building. Ryugu home is renovated from an existing building with a yard full of oddities, all the same as Colonel Sanders, is what we have about that. So the home she lives in is likely not a traditional home, in much the same way the school wasn't meant to be a school. It was a building for the logging lumber. It's a lumber yard, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The school, yeah. But her parents just never show up on camera. Keiichi makes one askance mention about her mom, and Rena just kind of avoids answering that question. So I don't know. If I took a cold read on it, I'd think she's probably, like, independent of my other theories about who Rena is. I think my vibe of her is that she is very alone and empty because there's nothing else. She has no other family in her life, it seems, and that she's compensating by trying to make family of her friends. Like, make food, spend time with them, become a part of their lives. Make sure she's there. As for Satoko, she needs a hug. Someone needs to give Satoko a hug. All right? I don't care what else happens. Just, my poor little gremlin. Satoko seems to be living with Rika at the temple right now and not with her uncle. Again, independent of my theories of who her uncle is, it's clear that she has no adults in her life aside from Rena and Mion. And I guess Rika, again, spoiler things I happen to know about Rika. Rika appears to be the one who's like, independent of all that as well, Rika appears to be the more mature one, and the one who's like taking care of their home. She's mentioned having a lot of just like homemaking skills and making food and breakfast for them and stuff, and meals for them. In addition to holding down like her position as the priestess of the shrine, which I assume takes like a non-zero amount of time and commitment.
Yeah, she's a whole ass local religious figure on top of being a small school child.
Exactly. Yeah, and again, just cold reading that's incredibly sad. Rika's parents are also dead, and she's had to grow up at such a young age and forced to be an adult when, like, she's fucking, like, what, 10 at most? Like, good God, think about what she's has to do to just be she doesn't get the time to be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
She's one of those kids where you, like, you meet them and they're, like, acting like a grown-ass adult, and you're like, dude, you're not even 14. What the hell? What is going on with you? What happened in your life that made you have to take charge like this? Kids her age aren't that grown up unless circumstances made them grow up. And not having a mother and father anymore certainly seems like a reason for her to grow the hell up real fast. And that's pretty damn sad. All of their home lives seem really sad.
Yeah, they kind of do, don't
and
they?
that's not to say that that's not to say that they're depressing or lacking for joy. Just that, like, oh my God, this is heartbreaking. Like, I'm not trying to say like their lives are miserable. Just that those circumstances definitely seem like, holy shit, that's rough. What the hell? They each deserve a hug. Especially Satoko. She gets 5.
Fair enough.
If there's like a Satoko plushie, I want one, and I want to give it a hug. And I'll tell her it's going to be okay. Please don't tell me she winds up being the murderer. I don't want to know. If she is, just don't tell me. Just let me have this. All right. She's a precious little gremlin who's trying to project onto Keiichi because she doesn't have her older brother anymore, and she's the one that's most visibly sad when Keiichi stops being himself. And I think that speaks to the fact that she is definitely not the most mature. She is definitely the least mature of them, because unlike the rest of them, she still gets to be a kid somehow. Despite everything, she still gets to be a kid because Rika's being the adult for the two of them. And that's... Oh, buddy. That's what I've got.
All right. I got 2 more questions from my own before we get on to viewer questions.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay.
So the first of them is one that I realized I forgot to write down the details of. So I'm hoping you have the details about the note.
The note.
Yeah, the lines that were removed from the note.
Yes, I do actually have that written down in my...
Why do you think those lines specifically were removed?
Okay, so we had a conversation about this, actually.
Yeah.
I think... Here's the note. I, Keiichi Maebara, am in fear for my life. Again, and this is... the first 3 lines were things he added originally, and then the other ones were ones that he added that night, the night things happened. And again, he's according to him, he's reporting just the facts, just what he knows, and it's so infuriatingly vague. I, Keiichi Maebara, am in fear for my life. I don't know why they are after my life. The only thing I do know is that it has to do with Oyashiro-sama's curse. Rena, and that's the stuff that he added to begin with. He then adds later, Rena and Mion are conspirators of the perpetrators. There are 4 or 5 adults, maybe more. They have a white van. The next 3 lines are removed. Please reinvestigate the victim from the dismemberment incident. He is alive. Tomitake-san's death was from an unknown drug. This syringe is proof. Those 3 lines were all cut out. And then what was left in was, I have no idea why it has become like this. If you're reading this, then I am probably already dead. You may or may not find my body. You who are reading this, please uncover the truth. That is my only desire.
Why those 3 lines?
Right. So they changed drastically if you assume that Keiichi's murdering of Rena and Mion had to be kind of like retroactively worked to be part of this big cover-up curse that's going on. I think those lines were removed for very important reasons. The first line, please reinvestigate the victim from the dismemberment incident. He's alive. It's clear from the Zonozaki's pressuring Ooishi, they don't want him reopening older cases.
Mm-hmm.
There is stuff there they don't want hidden. I don't know if that means it's exactly that the victim from the dismemberment incident is still alive. I know how that could happen. I can lay it out for you how that would have happened. But I don't know that that necessarily means to be that, or that they just don't want the police reopening that. Either way, they don't want to open that can of worms. That line's gone. The last line, this syringe is proof. Easy. There is no syringe there. If you leave that line in, the person writing the note suddenly looks like he doesn't make any sense.
So it's an attempt to make the note more plausible on this view.
Oh yeah, this is part of the manager likes that Keiichi's into baseball. It'll help the story. Whoever is using this is trying to make this, it has found the note and is trying to make it more plausible to fit what they have in front of them. And then the most important line, Tomitake-san's death was from an unknown drug, was removed because it was in between the other 2.
All right. that neatly wraps it up. That's a good explanation.
That is the reason that one is not there. That's part of the bait, is that, it's removed, it must be important. No, it's not. They're absolutely barking up the wrong tree with that, and I've said that for a very long time now. None of what we see... And again, his autopsy indicates that there were no drugs of that kind in his system. Even when the autopsy was done with the idea of looking for something like that in mind, there was nothing there. That was not how he died. He was hung or garroted. Again. That's my take on the note. And again, it was the fact that those lines were removed, which is what convinced me that there must actually be something to this conspiracy. And that this wasn't just Keiichi hearing stories and imagining that the worst version of them was the truth.
All right.
I do think that there is importance to the fact that they were removed. And I think understanding the fact that they were likely removed to help sell their version of events. Is what makes which ones were removed and why makes sense to me.
All right.
Yeah.
So, final question from me. let's set aside the mystery, set aside all these details we're trying to get into, set aside the specifics of who we think did what and why, and
That's
what
a whole lot to
people's
set aside, but I'll
backsides are.
try.
Let's think about the really broad themes of the story. You know, like how Umineko was about and so what do you think Higurashi's about in that way? What broad themes do you think we're talking about?
There's a couple of ones that seem to be on the pretty much on the surface. We talked about this, and you brought up a very interesting example of it when we were playing about like the slow the slow, sad, and often unforeseen, unseen cost of modernization, and whose lives and lifestyles get rolled to the side in favor of betterment, right? Whatever that might be. You brought up the song about the person whose home was flooded.
Oh yeah,
yeah, right. Like, and to bring electricity to those around him, and I'm like, yeah, there is a very tangible sadness, maybe a little over romanticized, but there is still a huge sadness to be like, our way of life is being forcibly changed.
Yeah,
maybe on some utilitarian scale it makes sense and it's for the betterment, but for me right here who lives in this place, I don't want that to happen. I'm comfortable with what my life here in this town looks like. I don't understand why I have to move so a bunch of other people in this prefecture can have an electronic fan in their house. You know what I mean? I get that is an incredibly poignant feeling. I have a feeling we're also going to see, because this is something Umineko also kind of like tiptoed around. But I have a feeling like it's come up a couple of times here as well. This idea of death and death as spectacle, or these crimes as spectacle, and not something that is, and not something that is personally difficult and harrowing for the people involved. Like the sensationalization.
That's a word.
It is,
isn't it?
Is it? It doesn't feel like it should be sensational. The sensationalizing of crime and tragedy for the benefit of people looking in. In this case, evidently taken to a literal extreme, where they are literally creating dramatic versions of these crimes to sell, and then the unspoken weight that has on the people who still have to live with it. Like I already mentioned this with Mion, but she still has to live with whatever the fuck happened between her and the site foreman 4 or 5 years ago. And rather than getting to move on, she gets to be constantly reminded of it because she has to continually play her part in the farce that keeps whoever from getting prosecuted for it. And that's horrifying when you look at it. They mentioned at one point that the murders around Hinamizawa have become worldwide, have become on some scale globally known.
Mm-hmm.
The police chief in Okonomiya police station notes that they have received global attention, which, yeah, they're gonna when your big cover up is, hey, what if a local curse thing, and we just kept doing that. Sound good? I feel like there's also kind of an undercurrent here of the nature of community and what we owe to those around us. Its inclusion in the story seems mostly just for misdirection and shock value at this point, but I still keep thinking about like Ooishi's grandmother's description of what the town of demons looked like. And this idea of that, like a group of ogres, a group of demons, Oni, I think is what they're actually meant to be, who would come down and hunt innocent human villagers, but they would pick out one beforehand, and as long as you didn't interfere, as long as you kept quiet and said nothing and didn't try to make waves, then they wouldn't come for you. And I imagine that chilling effect that has on the community at large. Because the story with Hinamizawa as a community is not that they are perpetrating a conspiracy. The story with Hinamizawa as a community is that a conspiracy is being perpetrated at their expense. The people who live there are the ones who have to live in fear of being the next victims. Not the people doing the actual, performing the actual curse. The random people who live in Hinamizawa are the ones who now live in fear of it. They're the ones who have to deal with that, with the tangible fallout from this. And that's pretty awful. As much as, like, even if you're doing it because you want to defend this town and keep a dam from flooding it and everywhere else around it, you've still made the entire community you're defending live in fear now. Is that worth it? Is that worth the price you've made them pay without asking them? I don't know. It would be one thing if, it would be one thing if it was the community itself coming together to do this. I don't think it's the case, but it would be one thing. Because then it's like, okay, we've all we've all agreed to this. The adults have all agreed that this is what we're going to do, and we will accept the consequences of it. But it really looks like it's being impinged on them from outside. Or from at least, for at least as far as Okonomiya, this next city over. It really seems like the Sonozakis didn't really think or care what the villagers living there would feel about having their local deity turned into this vengeful being that craves blood every year. I also do think we're going to get more about... I don't know how this is going to resolve thematically, but I think we are going to get more about delusion and the idea of what separates the stories we tell ourselves from what is actually happening. I do still contend that it seems like Higurashi is, if not a Denpa game itself, at least in conversation with that genre. It seems very aware of how delusion is used as a narrative tool in visual novels of the time, and is very keen on exploring, like, what does that actually mean for someone? What does it actually mean for someone like Keiichi to be absolutely convinced of something that is manifestly, demonstratably not the case? What does it look like for those around him who are now have to deal with someone they love or someone in their community acting hostile and angry for reasons they can't approach him about? You can't just walk up to him and be like, you're making all this up, because he's swinging around a bat and acting violent and making threats against people. Like, it's not some... I think it's very easy to kind of get lost in delusion as a literary device, especially for visual novels of this time and era, as a device for making a work seem much more fantastical or involved or more needlessly graphic than it needs to be, without... And a lot of them don't take the time to actually stop and look at, like, what does that actually do for the kid that we're making live through all this? What is his life actually like if he's being subject to these delusions? Like, that's not... even like fucking Chaos Head goes so as far as to turn delusion into a superpower, right? I know it's simplifying, but that's still broadly true. It has this almost romantic part of use as a literary device, when it's actually incredibly tragic and difficult to deal with for that person and the people around them. And I expect more and more of the tragedy surrounding Keiichi is going to come back to that as we get deeper into Higurashi.
All right. Those are some themes.
Oh, am I done now?
Oh, did you?
I could keep going. Sorry, I've been doing nothing but thinking about this game for the past however many weeks. I feel like those were all the big ones I had, though. Those are the big ones that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned. The sensationalizing of murder and trauma, and also like the literary romanticization of delusion, the slow march of progress and the cost it bears on people, the fear of a community. Yeah, I think I got everything I wanted to get in there, actually. You know, I feel good about that.
All right.
Put me on the record.
And I think it's time to get to some viewer questions.
Oh, thank God. Oh, please tell me they threw me softballs.
So let's start off with one from Heath1474 on YouTube.
Yo!
Which is this. I think this is a really good question, a really interesting one.
Yep.
If you were to take the narration at face value, that is, ignore the theory that Keiichi is having some paranoia-induced delusions.
Sure.
What would you think is happening? If all of what Keiichi saw
is literally true, and all that he reports is literally true, then what would you think
was happening?
What would I think is happening? That's really strange, isn't it? Because if we were to accept that, then we'd have to accept the existence of some actor or force that is able to be present next to or behind Keiichi at all times, but without being seen or outwardly known. Right? The force that is creeping behind him when he's on the phone call, the force that follows him in and takes a deep, sharp intake of breath in his doorway, the force that he imagines behind him in the 07 Mart, that would require us to create this actor that has a lot of facets to it that, like, fuck, if that had to be the case, I don't know, magic?
It's always an option. We can always just accept what's put before us.
The thing is, right? But the thing is, I feel like accepting exactly what's put before me is equivalent to believing that the curse is real and that the curse is following Keiichi. I don't know that I currently have a good reading of events that are exactly one-to-one with what Keiichi reports, that don't rely some way on him being on him, if not being, again, not necessarily being outright delusional, but taking his self-reporting of feelings as factual and running with that. If that was the case, then then my thing is like, yeah, well, Oyashiro-sama is probably there and is probably does probably have a reason to threaten or stalk Keiichi, but like, no, I don't know. It's a really good question, and I'm not sure I have a satisfying answer for it.
And that's a fine answer.
Because I don't want the answer to just be I give up. It's magic now. But also, I don't know that I have a good reading of events that both completely removes the idea of Keiichi being a unreliable narrator, right? But I don't know that I have a good retelling of events that both accepts the idea that Keiichi is not an unreliable narrator, that what he's saying is true, and also doesn't just accept what's put before me.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And that might just be my lack of imagination. But I really have tried to look at this as hard as I can, and I just don't see a version of events like that.
All right.
I don't know. That might just be me. Drones. 1980s drones are following him.
I see.
The feeling of him being watched? Spy satellites. It ties back into the slow march of progress thing, and is that a good thing? They're being watched by, I don't know, what satellites do we have up there in 1980? I don't know. Pick one. That's what it is.
All right. So let's go to another question. From Discord, Dohuwario asks, how about that white van that almost maybe isekai'd Keiichi and was also seen by him at his house at the end?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah, right? It's like almost like the house was built to be able to hold that van right there because his folks are in on it.
I know. That's definitely not a thing that the narration states.
This definitely ties back. This definitely seems like more evidence for the theory that Keiichi's parents are in on this somehow. How about that van? On the one hand, like conservation of detail, it's probably the same van. Maybe the first scene is like maybe it was just a poor driving rather than a hit and run. Remember, the only evidence we have that it's a hit and run is Keiichi's self-reporting of how he feels about what happened there, that he thought for sure that they must have swerved over to hit him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying he's wrong, but again, we have a lot of evidence that Keiichi likes to take the worst possible interpretation of any set of facts he's given. So I don't know that that necessarily has to be insidious. It could just be someone was driving poorly and swerved too far and almost hit him, which is bad, but isn't malicious. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it shows up at the end is what makes it really interesting to me, especially that it shows up at his house. It's the doctor mobile. It's the manager mobile. It's the manager's car. The manager. Where else are you going to keep all of the props for when you're setting up moitas and stuff? Well, that's where you keep the garret and the sand and plywood that you then put near Tomitake's body. I don't fucking know.
Fair enough.
Mio's in the car. Mio's in the car. She's the doctor, and she is got a sonic screwdriver. She's a nurse, at least.
Close enough.
Close fucking enough. I'm not trying to put off these. I hope y'all don't feel like I'm just shutting down your questions. I really am trying, but I don't know. I don't know that I have a better idea for what the van is. I guess maybe it might. Like, I feel like it's tied in some way to the conspiracy, which would tie it to the Sonozakis. And we know the mayor has ties to the family. Maybe it's the mayor's car. But also, it could just be a van. Sometimes a van is just a van. You just need to have a way to get from place to place.
Fair enough. Some questions from Fawful999.
Ooh, hit me.
There's a question for me, in fact.
Oh, yay! Can I read it to you?
Sure. Do you want to?
No, I don't.
Okay. The question is, Vivian, was there anything you noticed that felt different in the VN as compared to the anime?
Ooh, that's right, because you were an anime first.
Yeah, and there is. And I can't remember if I mentioned this while we were playing or only if it was after the fact while we were talking about it. But there's one very specific thing. And that's that the VN does a much better job of making it seem like Keiichi's a probably unreliable narrator. That's something that I didn't even think about in the course of watching the first chapter's episodes. I did not,
really?
in any way, shape, or form, think that I should be doubting what Keiichi was seeing and hearing and doing and reporting. And the VN, I think, does a much better job of making it clear that all of this is really vague. It's not quite clear what really is going on around Keiichi.
Yeah.
So that'd be what I'd say is different. I think that in the anime, it was very easy to just roll along with everything as though it's exactly the way it seems. And the VN makes it very much not like that.
I am looking forward to getting to see the anime when we're done with this. People speak highly of it.
It's fun.
Yeah.
If you like murder.
It's fun. Don't you love watching shows about little girls murdering people? I sure do. Golly gee.
Okay. Second question from Fawful999.
Oh, the opening theme for the anime. You made me listen to it. It's a bop.
Yeah, it is. It's real good.
Sorry, go ahead.
Second question from Fawful999. what were your expectations going into Onikakushi, and what expectations do you have for the rest of Higurashi?
That's a good point. My expectations going in were set entirely by the reputation the anime has. And in my mind, it had a reputation for like having young girls and like slasher and gore type tropes and horror. I didn't really know much else about it, and after it became clear that we were probably going to play it on the channel at some point, I, at that point, purposely stopped looking up more about it. I do have one other thing that I knew about. It again, it's a spoiler, so I don't want to. It's a spoiler that hasn't come up yet, but it still feels wrong to deprive that to someone else. So, but it was a detail about it that kind of put it more in line with shows I had watched before and enjoy. If that's enough for you. So I did have and knowing that gave me an idea of how the rest of the arcs might be structured. I guess coming from Umineko, I have an idea that the first 4 arcs are probably going to be like the stuff that's set up, like here's all of our mysteries and questions, and then the last 4 arcs are going to be, knocking those pins down. I structurally I feel like I should be locking in how I feel about things by the end of arc 4, if not sooner. I didn't expect this to be so shonen, if that makes sense. I knew it was going to be goofy, because R07, no matter what else you say about him, is a goofy author. They are incredibly silly. You have to be that silly to write something that serious. I maintain that. But I wasn't prepared for just how much time was going to be spent playing tag, playing Cluedo, playing President. That was a surprise. Going forward, I expect we'll see a lot more about Hinamizawa as a community.
Definitely not because I spoiled that for you well before we even decided to watch this. I play this game.
What?
Oh,
you mean the joke about how one of the chapters is just yeah, okay, yeah, sure, but like no, independent of that, like I do think we're gonna have like it would have to. The big unknowns right now are saying the big unknowns we have are what's the deal with Keiichi's family. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more about them and what they're up to. What the true home lives of these girls are really like. What the community itself actually feels about. How they actually feel about the curse and these events and what their opinions on it are and having to live in this area, and what is actually going on to make this curse happen, to make the fiction of this curse happen. A little bit more into the machinery of that. I think we're also going to have to get some clarity on some of these actors and people who we have names and kind of like show up in the periphery but haven't had their screen time yet. I imagine we must learn more about Mio and Tomitake, because I've tried as hard as I can. I can't figure out how they are related to this right now. They really just seem like people who shouldn't have been killed and were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the biggest knock against my theory, is that if my theory about how things are in Hinamizawa is true, why are they dead? That makes no sense. So I expect we'll learn more about them. I expect we'll learn more about what Ooishi's stake in this is as well. Whether or not I'm actually right about what his stake is, we will have to have that answered at some point, for sure. I expect we'll get more details about like the local ceremonies as well. Like again, as I tried to be suspicious of the Watanagashi and I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
but I expect like maybe I don't have all the information about it. The best I got was that like the dance Rika does where she's whacking the mattresses, right, with the pole, matches the bruises that are found on Tomitake's body later.
Mm-hmm.
But and like there's sand near the plywood he had, which then they were on the bank of a river. But like there's a sacred rope, and he looked like he was definitely hung. But that's just coincidence. I don't know if it's coincidence, but it's like it's not anything firm. I expect we're going to get more about like what actually we're going to get more about the Watanagashi and what that ceremony actually means to the people who live here. Like we saw the kids version of it, like, oh, we get to run around and play games and have fun, but is that what it's like for the adults? Is that what it's like for the people who have to run this? What does the mayor think of all this? I expect we're also going to get a lot more about Keiichi's state of mind. One way or another, I think we're going to get some clarity on what Keiichi means as a narrator, or how far we can trust Keiichi as a narrator, and what that means for him as a person, and how the people around him relate to him. Like, maybe it turns out to be because he is just actively delusional. If that's the case, we're going to see a lot more how people react to and deal with him, knowing that someone they love is delusional. Maybe he is some version of catastrophizing and or depression, or some version of what I was speculating. Then we're going to get more of like what his friends think about him, and how it feels to live around him, and what his parents think. We're going to have to get some clarity on Keiichi as a narrator, I think.
All right.
What else is coming up? Is there anything else coming up? Banger tunes. We're going to get the music corrected for chapter 2. So we will have banger tunes. Bangers. Straight bangers. And also I expect that we'll get hard confirmation of trans Rena theory.
Yeah.
Hard confirmation. The proof is in the pickles.
It's indisputable.
It's indisputable.
I got one more from Fawful999.
Hit me!
How much do you know about Mahjong, since there was a discussion about it at the end?
Ooh, good question. Very little. What I know about Mahjong is like the solitaire version that came pre-installed on like computers like around circa mid-2000s, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were always coming pre-installed on Microsoft computers along with like Spider Solitaire and all that. And it's my understanding is that that's very different. That was just like a tile match. It's very different from how actual Mahjong is played.
Mm-hmm.
So which is to say, little or nothing at all. Maybe I'll have to learn some so I can turn the Mahjong board around. Right? No, I'm trying.
Are you ready to learn a Vivian fact that I don't think you know yet?
Yes! Hell yes! I love learning new wife lore.
So, my answer to this is that I don't remember much, if anything, about Mahjong.
Oh?
I had totally forgotten that back when I was a child, around the time that we first moved states.
Yep.
We were part of a Mahjong club. My whole family, my mother, my sister, and I would go on Saturday mornings to play Mahjong.
Fucking
cool. We had our own set that we brought, and there was a group that would meet every week at the local library, mostly little old ladies that would bring their Mahjong sets and play, not like gambling for money Mahjong, but just like for fun matches.
Yeah.
And it was legitimately a very cool game that I was super into, and then never kept up with after the time that I
we should learn how to play
middle
Mahjong.
School. I think I played it maybe as late as 5th or 6th grade before I gave up, because nobody fucking plays Mahjong in the northeastern United States.
Fuck that. We should relearn and play Mahjong online or something. Yeah. That sounds fucking awesome.
It was cool. I remember it being a really fun game with a lot of surprising complexity to it, and I also remember the little old ladies being alarmingly sharp at it. Like, you cannot underestimate the wisdom of years.
I'm going to call Roan on that one.
Yeah. The only other thing I know about Mahjong is from watching fucking Akagi or Keiichi or whichever the one is from the gambling mangas, man.
No. Oh no. Oh yeah, the other one.
Yeah, I think it's not Keiichi. I think Keiichi's the other gambling. I think I'm thinking of.
Man, why is gambling manga?
It's mostly that one guy. Yeah, I'm thinking of Akagi, the genius who descended into darkness, which was fun as hell and also had very little to do with how Mahjong really works.
I mean, who cares, right?
Anyway, that's your bit of Vivian lore.
I can't believe. Thank you so much. Y'all helped me learn new wife lore. Oh, I'm so happy.
All right. So I got one from Easy Corey on the Discord.
Yeah, hit me.
This is pacing wise. How would you compare the expedience of reading Higurashi Arc 1 versus Umineko Arc 1?
Ooh. I feel like they kind of do like the similar thing where it's like a lot of time spent on the ramp up, which is a ramp up getting you used to this cast and their circumstances before things kind of take a very gradually increasing left turn. I feel like, and again, there was maybe the benefit of hindsight at that point, but Umineko definitely felt a little bit better in that respect. Higurashi definitely feels like it spent a very long time building up stuff and like playing card games and stuff, which wasn't bad, but past a certain point didn't feel like it was adding much. I definitely get that there's value to be had in like and how each of the kids play the games and what their strategies are. Like I have sections in my notes from just like analyzing what have they said about how they're playing this game. It's important that Mion wins the tag game by pretending to be part of a group she's not. Right? Like that feels very important thematically. It's important that their driving philosophy is just win at any cost. Just don't lose. But I also feel like that didn't need to be as long as it was. It definitely has, this is my first stab at this, aspects to it. Not to say it's bad, because it again, fucking wonderful. I had a great time with it. But it definitely feels like it might have been tightened up a little bit. That said, I felt like the pull towards the end was a lot more dramatic. And maybe that's just because of how I was reading it at the time. But there really wasn't that much actual violence in Higurashi until Keiichi slammed Rena's hands on the door.
Yeah.
There was a whole lot of implied paranoia stuff, which is different from Umineko. Umineko is a murder mystery, right? It's different. People have to die in order for there to be a murder mystery. So so the relationship between the violence and the pace of the story is different by necessity. Higurashi was more interested in creating a sense of paranoia and dread, which it did very well and came up to a good payoff. It definitely did feel like maybe it spent too long on it, though. But that's like just critique brain. Like, I'm not here, this isn't a fucking essay on my desk that I'm gonna grade like, A- C after class. It's more that like that's just how my experience of it. Taken as it is, it's still a wonderful time though. I expect future arcs are probably going to be a little bit quicker to get into it. And by into it I mean things seeming strange, because we're already primed with this sense of paranoia now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I think, and maybe it was necessary, but part of what that long buildup in Higurashi did was create a very intense sense of paranoia. And it did it very well. By the end, even the way I was reading it, I still felt like all of Keiichi's dread and fear at what was going on around him, even if I was calling it out at the time for being almost entirely stuff that he made up to get mad about. I expect what will happen is we'll start seeing more things that are undeniably happening. Stuff that seems horrible outside of Keiichi's own paranoia about it. Rather than just at the very end. But stuff that indicates that there was more to what's going on here than just what Keiichi is fearing inside himself. But that's my thought about it. Hopefully that answered the question about pacing.
So, some questions from Melis on the Discord. And I'm actually going to split one of these into two questions. So, we're going to start with, what are your favorite characters in the story? And I have thoughts on this too.
What are my favorite characters in the story?
Yeah, so far.
Satoko.
Yeah?
She's done nothing wrong. She is just a precious little gremlin who is trying her best. And I just want everything to work out for her. God, she is my favorite. Maybe it's just because she hasn't had enough screen time yet, but like, I really do feel like of all the characters, the fact that Satoko is still like smiling and having a good time is the most heartwarming shit. Kids' parents are dead or missing, got shunted off to her uncle and aunt. Her uncle's a deadbeat now, and her aunt's dead. And she's still just sitting here smiling, home alone in Keiichi whenever he walks in. And clearly wants Keiichi to be like a big brother figure for her. And I just think that's sweet. I love her, and I want her to be happy. And I'm going to be so sad when she inevitably gets murdered in one of these arcs. It's going to be the saddest thing, and I will ugly cry. I will ugly cry.
Fair enough.
What about you? Who's your favorite?
Let's see. I kind of two.
Yeah, please.
Okay. I really like Takano Mio. She looks tired all the time, but also smug, and she just hangs around and tells irresponsible ghost stories to children, psychologically disturbed children no less, and then pieces out and vanishes.
And just like, nah, I'm good.
That's great.
Consequences of my actions couldn't be me.
Exactly. Just fucking show up and ruin some kid's life a little bit and hang out with your boyfriend and then vanish from the world. Message. I love that. I think that's great.
I love that for you're right. That's good for her. Go bird watch or something. I don't care.
But my other maybe more serious answer about a character we actually know shit about, unlike Mio that we know fuck all about at this point, would be Rena. I just think she's neat. She likes cute stuff. She beats people with a baseball bat. She
allegedly that was never proven in a court of law and no charges were filed. It's allegedly.
She has a lot of seemingly rather warped views on reality and yet is still a rather swell friend to those around her. I think that's great.
That is great.
Good for her.
Can I give one more answer?
Yeah. Because I gave two, you can give two.
I'm going to throw one out for Keiichi.
Yeah.
I for reasons that I hope are clear after how much I went into what I think his internal life is like, but the dude is, like, this so far seems to be fundamentally a tragedy about Keiichi. And I don't think that should go understated. He is like, I love how much time and depth is spent on his internal world and how his own sense of relation to the world around him affects like how he is able to talk to people and make friends, and it's excuse me. I think he's gonna have some incredible depth. I'm hoping, but like knock on wood, that it seems like he's ready to be a character that has some incredible depth to him, and I hope we get to see more of that in future chapters.
All right.
He dies within like 20 minutes of chapter 270. Rest of the chapter is just people going about their daily lives.
Second part of this question, then. Favorite character to voice?
Oh, well, I think we all know who that is now, don't we?
You always got to have one.
I like the gremlin. However, I think my favorite one to voice has been Keiichi.
Fair enough.
I don't think I found my stride with Battler until like much later, when we were playing Umineko, and I gave him a similar voice. Do you like the "Ooh, look at me, I'm wacky" voice? Which again, I still defend for Battler. He is goofy, but I feel like I didn't quite figure out how to express that about him and also express the tragedy of him until later on. I feel like, and someone even commented about this, which made me feel really good that they felt I was doing a good job, bringing to life Keiichi's inner paranoia in like a believable and sad and empathetic way, rather than in one that was getting at those dimensions of his character. And I felt like for a cold read, I feel good about that. I have had a lot of fun trying to bring those emotions up to make really hammer home just how complex this kid's paranoia is. It's not just being frightened. It's a very potent mixture of sadness and frightened. And I think making sure that element, I'm glad I could bring the element of him to it. How about you?
This is tough. I feel like I haven't yet had somebody who I'm just like, yeah, this is great. I'm all about voicing this character.
Yeah.
In specific. So I'm not sure what my answer is.
Well, maybe you'll kind of fall into the rhythm as we go on.
I bet I will.
Finding some more parts of their express. Once Rika starts her knee pieing, I'm sure you'll.
That's going to be so hard because I'm really bad at
knee pie
juvenile voices and so on like that. And I'm continually jealous at your ability to bring out more different voices and vocal aspects than I can.
You say more like it isn't just two.
It's far more than two. There's many different things you can conjure. And I think that's neat.
Well,
that's hard. That's hard to do. And I hope that someday I can figure that out so that I can give folks more distinct characterization rather than just being slightly further up or lower down in my vocal range.
I like the way you express characters though, because they have like this. You give Rena this kind of fun and whimsy about her that really feels true to her, and Mion this kind of sassy brashness that makes her feel like kind of like a look at you, kid. I really would like at some point to. I think we would benefit at some point from being able to do like a voice acting coach, like just a little bit of voice acting training and vocal coaching. Not to do it for a profession, but just to be able to like help bring our performances on this channel for our, again, glorified book club live to book club. If you haven't noticed, this isn't a Let's Play channel. It never was. It's a book club. It's always has been a book club, and it always will be a book club.
The books just have anime girls in them, and there's music sometimes also.
The books just have anime girls in them, and there is also music sometimes, yes.
All right. So, another one from Melis.
Yep.
How does your enjoyment of the moment-to-moment story feel compared to Umineko?
Ooh, that's rough. Umineko has a whole lot of spectacle going for it that Higurashi so far doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Higurashi so far has felt very grounded in a way that Umineko purposefully flouted at times.
Mm.
I know someone mentioned that Ryukishi took influence from the Blair Witch Project and its use of like actual documentation and stuff to help give credence and backup to the crime and incidents it was portraying. And you could see that in the way Ryukishi frequently has tips that are just like, these are documents and from clippings from newspapers surrounding this incident that help give it more dimension and place it more in the world. Which is a very different experience. I like it. It definitely is more of an acquired taste, I feel. If you're not already the kind of person who's into like, oh yeah, I'm ready to solve some mystery, gang. Get in the mystery machine, Scoob. We're then I could see how you might find this boring. Like, and I don't. That's not a jab or anything. That's just like, if you are not someone who's like, yeah, I'm here to solve a mystery, and also spend some time playing card games. I could see how you'd find this to be nothing interesting.
I don't know. I kind of feel the opposite. I kind of feel that Umineko, you have to be invested in the core mystery for it to really bring out full enjoyment. Whereas with Higurashi, you can very much experience it without seriously engaging in the mystery and just being like, oh, there's silly antics, and then there's gruesome murders and paranoia and stuff, and that's what's going on. It feels like a story where you can engage with it at the surface level and still enjoy it quite a bit in a way that you couldn't with Umineko.
That's fair. I feel like Umineko tends to filter out people like that before it gets to the parts where you really have to be paying attention, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas, hey, I guess you're right about that. I could see. I'll try. I haven't read the rest of this, but I trust that like your appraisal of that. You could just do a surface level reading of this and still feel fulfilled at the end. You definitely can't do that with Umineko, but it also filters out the people who don't want to do that way before they get to the parts where it's really important. Yeah. That's how I feel.
Fair enough. I got one more for you from the Discord.
Oh, okay.
And I think this is a great Discord question to wrap up the Discord cues with.
All right.
What are your hopes for later chapters? We talked about your expectations, what you think will happen, but what do you hope will happen? And this is another one from Malice.
What do I hope will happen?
Yeah.
Ooh, I feel like I don't want to reiterate everything I said with expectations. Because a lot of those expectations were also hopes.
Okay, they're also hopes. That's fine.
Because it's like, these are the questions that are burning in my mind, and a lot of those expectations were based on like, these are questions I still have and want to know more about in order to help get a better picture of what's going on here. What I hope? What do I hope? I hope we let Satoko murder someone.
Hell yeah.
Just once, though, as a treat.
Hell yeah, just as a treat.
Right.
Just
she doesn't have to be like the instigator or anything, but just let her murder someone.
Yeah.
Just let her have a go at it. Take a whack. She deserves it.
She's earned it.
I hope we see more of the relationships between the girls that isn't in the club when Keiichi is present. I want to know more about what their lives are like when they're not at school around their group of friends. Because even amongst like you and I, like when we're around people, we act differently than we do on our own.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not to say it's inauthentic, it's just different. And I really, really I hope we get to see more dimension for those girls. Because they are clearly where the heart of this story is at. And I would be remiss to not see more of their lives. I feel like we have a lot of big question marks gaping over them as well. So, yeah. Oh, I hope Keiichi murders someone else. Who do we want Keiichi to murder next time? I want Keiichi to murder. I hope Keiichi murders. Let me roll a d12 quick. He's gonna murder Ooishi next time. No one will see it coming.
Oh, yeah.
No one will see it coming. What about you? What do you hope happens? Come on, Vivian. What do you hope happens? Tell everyone, what do you hope happens, Vivian?
I'm actually wondering if there's any things I can say that makes sense as an answer to this. I suppose
it's you don't have to, because I know spoilers. It's I'm just being persnickety on purpose.
I think I just hope we get some more depth into the things that I already appreciated from the anime. We already did.
That's fair.
We already did get a fair bit, and it led me to appreciate facets I hadn't before. So I hope that keeps happening. That I keep being able to see new facets of the story by virtue of the different medium and the different way it's being told.
Yeah. I hope he gets some more banger soundtracks.
So,
Ugh.
we wrapped up Discord questions.
Okay.
But I have a secret final question for you.
Oh, no.
I bet you weren't expecting that.
No, I wasn't.
My final question is this. Is there anything you're surprised you didn't get asked or that you wish you got asked?
Oh, shit. Stuff I wish we'd covered but didn't.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we've got space. If there's anything that you're like, wow, why didn't you ask me about this? Or, oh, I really thought people from the Discord would care about X, Y, and Z.
Someone would have pressed me on trans Rena theory, given how hard I was going in the paint for that one. I really thought someone would have pressed me on.
How does that make you feel that no one did? What if everyone's afraid to because you're right on the money?
See, that's actually what I was. My first thought was like, what if they're afraid to? What if they know if they say anything they'll just have to because I'm right? What if I'm actually right? Trans Rena theory, it's real. I want to believe. Yeah, what? I'm surprised. No, someone did ask me about about Keiichi's state of mind, like if he was being 100%, like if he wasn't delusional, how do we reconcile that with the story? I feel like I managed to worm in every single strange note thing I wanted to. I think there were some details I didn't quite get a chance to mention, like the fact that a lot of the more dramatic things that Keiichi starts happening to Keiichi seem to be in response to him learning about ways things could go wrong. Like learning Rena might be involved leads suddenly to Rena confronting him with the whole lies bit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like those bits, those most dramatic and maybe perhaps not real bits, always seem to happen after the idea for something like that is seeded. It's not where something happens organically or he has a delusion organically, and then we come up with a reason for it afterwards. And I think that kind of link of causality is another important reason why I think we can't trust Keiichi as an author very far, or as a narrator very far, because he's clearly letting new information he learns about how bad things could be affect what he is seeing and experiencing, rather than the other way around. I think I'm surprised it didn't get asked. No one asked me who I thought the killer was. No one.
That's right. That is kind of weird.
Yeah. It's kind of weird.
I didn't even think to ask. That's fucking funny.
Who do I think killed Tomitake? It's like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, I think the reason I didn't even bother asking. I will tell you the reason I didn't bother asking, and it's because of something that we've talked about already in private. That we just don't have that much to go on at this point. I don't think we have enough details to get like a super great explanation of these things other than taking a wild swing in the dark. If you want to take a shot in the dark at who killed Tomitake, you can, but
because we're like, what, 1/4 of the way through the question arcs right now?
Yeah.
I feel like we've been given if nothing else, we now have a lot more known unknowns.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of what this is, setting the stage and clearing up. Here are the things that we do and don't know at this point, and here are the things that we know that we don't know and don't know that we don't know.
I think it's important to reiterate that, like, what I'm thinking right now is only based on information from chapter 1.
Yep.
There are not a single one of my theories I am so committed to that I won't jettison it if it becomes untenable with new information.
Hooray for empiricism.
Except for trans Rena theory.
Yeah, which is incontrovertibly true.
Incontrovertibly correct. I read it from moment 1, and I will not go back on that. And I will willfully ignore entire swaths of her backstory. I'm being glib. I do think it's interesting that her backstory is the one that has the most doubt around it, and the fact that we see none of the other members of this prestigious pillar of the community Ryugu family. But moving along. Yeah. I don't think there was anything else I really felt I needed to mention. I think I got in all my important details and stuff. We managed to do this without spoiling Umineko, which was nice. I feel good about that. No one asked me whether or not I thought the curse was real. I don't.
Wow, you're right. That's funny. The whole question from the end of arc cast room discussion on like is the curse real? Is it Oyashiro-sama and all that? Mm-hmm. I also didn't even think to ask you that because I already knew that you had thoughts about it and it would come up.
Well, I think that is a good 3.5 hours. Oh my fucking.
Stoked to edit it?
So stoked to edit 3.5 hours of footage. Well, no, because now I have to like I have to edit the audio tracks together, then I have to record the PNG tubers, then I have to put them all back together, then I have to add in any on-screen elements. Y'all better enjoy this episode. Oh, man. Oh, this is great. I hope you all enjoyed it, though. Like, I hope I'm having a great time with this game and this mystery. I hope that that the amount of investment I have in it is coming through. I really have put a lot of time and hours into trying to understand as much as I can with what we have from the first chapter. And I hope that shows. I know part of what people enjoy is that we're invested in it, and I'm invested in it for myself, but also like this is something we put on YouTube for people to watch. So I hope you enjoyed it and learned something too.
I certainly did.
Did you? What'd you learn?
I learned a Vivian fact.
Oh, that's right. You learned a fact about yourself.
I did.
Is, not gonna lie, unusual, but interesting, fascinating.
Yeah, I don't usually bother to learn facts about myself.
There is gonna be another gap before we get to chapter 2. Again, in case you're just hearing this now for some reason, we're spacing these out just to avoid burnout and to make sure that this isn't just the Higurashi channel for the next 2 years. I believe we're probably in the middle of Steins Gate 0 episodes still right now. So when that's done, we'll probably come back and do chapter 2.
Yeah.
So please look forward to it. I usually don't actually just straight up say this, but like, hey, maybe consider the like, comment, subscribe. You got to the end of a 3.5 hour discussion video about one chapter of an 8-chapter work. So, I don't know. Does that seem worth it to you? We put a lot of work and effort into this. and I don't mind coming out here and saying I put a lot of work into this and I feel okay saying, you know what, you can click that button for me.
More importantly, Oyashiro-sama will be happy if you click the button.
That is true.
I think you should click the button.
That is true. I have it on good authority. Oyashiro-sama will be happy with you if you click that button. You will not be chosen to be the next victim of the curse. Probably. Legally, I can't guarantee it.
Smash that like, comment and subscribe.
Are we just sitting here awkwardly now?
Yeah, I was thinking, is there anything else I want to add? But no, I think that's the end of it.
Okay. I was originally going to be like, I wanted to end it on a see y'all again when something else cries, but I missed the moment.
I can throw that in there if you want.
I missed the moment.
You sure?
Yeah, I missed the moment.
Okay. Sorry about that. You can do it next time.
Yeah.